Good evening. What you are about to hear is a work of fiction, a chronicle of an outbreak that has not occurred, told through the voices of scientists, reporters, and the frightened few who witnessed the fall. There is no rage virus sweeping through our cities, no collapse of civilization at our doorstep. The broadcasts you will hear were created through artificial intelligence, yet the terror, the quiet despair, the slow unraveling of reason, all came from human imagination. And yet, how familiar it seems. A world undone not by monsters, but by its own reflection. What follows is entertainment, but it is also a warning. The outbreak begins now. Enjoy the show.
Good morning, BBC Radio 4 here with your morning bulletin. I'm Jim Mitchell. Topping our news today, a tragic incident at a Cambridge University research facility overnight. Police rushed to the scene when alarms blared around 2:30 this morning. I'm told a major security situation is ongoing, with police establishing an expanded perimeter around the complex. The incident began when animal rights activists broke into a neuroscience lab running an experiment called Infected with Rage, a study looking at brain pathways linked to aggressive behavior in primates. The university has released a brief statement confirming that research animals were released from their enclosures during the break-in. Unconfirmed reports suggest there may have been multiple casualties inside the facility. Let's go now to our reporter, Selina Bell, who's at the scene outside the Cambridge Neuroscience complex.
Thanks, Jim. I'm standing at the police cordon, approximately 200 metres from the entrance to the Cambridge Neuroscience complex. The situation here is extremely tense, with a massive police presence and specialised units in what appear to be hazmat suits entering and exiting the building. Police have been exceptionally tight-lipped about what's happening inside the facility. However, multiple sources have confirmed that a group of animal rights activists gained access to the primate research wing around 2:30 this morning. What happened after that remains unclear, but emergency services received a series of increasingly frantic distress calls from inside the facility before communications abruptly ceased. I've been here since shortly after 5 a.m, and I have not seen any survivors being brought out of the building. Rather disturbingly, multiple coroner's vans arrived about an hour ago. Officials are refusing to confirm any fatalities, stating only that the situation is contained within the facility. I've got someone with me who witnessed part of the incident, a local resident from the housing estate adjacent to the research facility. John, tell us what you saw and heard last night.
It was about 2:30, maybe 3 in the morning. I was up watching some late telly when all these alarms started going mental. Then came these screams, not normal screams, mind you, something else entirely, not like anything human I've ever heard, sort of animal, but worse, somehow ran right through me like ice. It did. The worst bit came later though, around 4:30. I saw someone stumbling out from behind the building, couldn't tell if it was a man or woman in the dark, but they were moving all wrong, like jerky-like, kept twitching and stopping, then rushing forward again, disappeared into those woods behind the complex. Police came round early this morning, asking if we'd seen anyone leave the facility. They wouldn't say why, but they had these pictures of the animal rights group. Something proper bad happened in there. They've got armed officers all around the perimeter now.
Thanks for sharing that, John. Cambridge University's official statement describes this only as a serious security incident currently under investigation. They've confirmed the facility remains in complete lockdown, but insist the public is not at risk. However, local authorities have cordoned off the entire woodland area behind the complex and are conducting what they describe as a precautionary search operation. Police have established 3 separate cordons and are diverting all traffic away from the area. We've seen specialised military vehicles arriving within the last hour, though officials would not comment on why military personnel are being involved in what was initially described as a simple break-in. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks for that report, Selina. With me now is Dr. Frank Gleeson, a primatologist and research fellow at the UK Health Security Agency, who's been working closely with the Cambridge team. Dr. Gleeson, what can you tell us about this research and the potential risks associated with it?
Morning, Jim. First, I want to express my deep concern for my colleagues at the facility. While I can't comment specifically on the ongoing situation, I can provide some context about the research itself. The Infected with Rage study explores the biological roots of aggression in primates. We've been running it for about 18 months now, investigating neural pathways associated with aggressive impulses and inhibition control. The research involves a recombinant strain of Ebola that we've modified to target specific regions of the brain. Our goal was initially to develop an anger inhibitor, a treatment that could potentially help people with severe aggression disorders. We used the Ebola virus as a delivery vehicle because of its unique ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and its adaptability to genetic modification. The compounds were engineered to suppress overactive neural pathways associated with rage responses. In the interest of transparency, I should clarify that the test subjects do exhibit significant behavioral changes when exposed to these compounds. These chimps demonstrate extreme aggression, heightened strength, and complete lack of normal inhibition responses. This is why they're kept in specialized containment units with multiple backup security systems. The modified virus has proven to be remarkably effective at targeting the intended neural pathways. But as with any research involving highly adaptable pathogens like Ebola, we maintain extraordinary safety protocols. The containment systems at the facility exceed BSL-4 standards precisely because of the unpredictable nature of recombinant viral research.
Dr. Gleeson, given what you've just described, how dangerous would these animals be if they came into contact with people unfamiliar with handling them?
I must be absolutely clear on this point. The test subjects in the advanced stages of our research would be extremely dangerous if mishandled. They would not respond to normal deterrence, would likely attack without provocation, and would continue attacking regardless of injury to themselves. This is precisely why we maintain such strict protocols. The facility has multiple containment systems designed to prevent any physical contact between infected subjects and personnel without proper protective equipment. However, someone unfamiliar with these protocols, such as intruders, would be at catastrophic risk if they breach these containment systems. I want to emphasize that these behavioral modifications are temporary and confined to our test subjects. There is no risk to the general public as long as proper containment procedures are followed. The facility was specifically designed to ensure that even in worst-case scenarios, the situation would remain contained within the building.
Thank you for those insights, Dr. Gleeson. Moving to other news, London bicycle courier Jim Williams remains in a coma at St Thomas's Hospital after being hit by a delivery van in Deptford last week. Doctors say his condition is stable. His family has asked for privacy during this difficult time. And for today's weather, the Met Office tells us to expect scattered showers across much of the southeast, with temperatures hovering in the mid-teens. If you're in the Midlands or further north, look forward to clearer skies but chillier conditions as evening approaches. This is Jim Mitchell, and that wraps up our morning bulletin. Stay with us for more updates throughout the day. BBC Radio 4 Evening News. I'm Jim Mitchell. We begin with a devastating update on this morning's incident at the Cambridge University research facility. Police have confirmed that all individuals present inside the laboratory during the break-in, including both research staff and the animal rights activists, were killed in what they're now describing as a catastrophic containment failure. Cambridge University has released a statement confirming that highly aggressive research primates came into direct contact with multiple individuals before emergency protocols could be implemented. The university expressed profound sadness at the tragic loss of life and has suspended all operations at the facility pending a full investigation. In a concerning development, police have issued an urgent alert regarding an unidentified individual seen fleeing the facility grounds in the early morning hours. This person may have been exposed to what authorities are only describing as hazardous research materials and is urged to seek immediate medical attention. The public is warned not to approach this individual under any circumstances, but to contact police immediately with any information. Authorities have expanded the search perimeter around the wooded area behind the research complex. Local residents are being advised to remain indoors this evening as a precautionary measure, though officials maintain there is no wider risk to public health at this time. We'll continue to follow this developing story and bring you updates as they become available.
What's up, Truth Seekers? Welcome back to another mind-blowing episode of the Truth Underground. Jimmy Crystal here, broadcasting from my secret studio location because, well, in this business you can't be too careful. For all you first-timers, this is where we peel back the layers of bullshit to expose what's really happening behind the curtain. Got an absolute bombshell for you today. A whistleblower, former Cambridge University researcher who bailed after discovering some seriously dark experiments going down. We're not talking academic research here. We're talking potential military bioweapons hiding behind respectable science. This brave soul reached out through encrypted channels and is using voice modulation tech to protect his identity. He'll be going by Brock Purdy for this conversation. Brock, man, welcome to the Truth Underground. Seriously appreciate you taking the risk to come on air.
Thanks for the platform, Jimmy. Been following your show for ages. You're one of the only voices out there asking hard questions about these so-called research facilities and what's really happening inside them.
Let's cut right to it. You were at Cambridge working on something called the Infected with Rage experiment. What the hell is that really about? Because I'm betting it's not the warm, fuzzy story they're feeding the public.
Not even close. On paper, it's just a neuroscience study looking at aggression pathways in primate brains. The public story is all about developing treatments for people with impulse control disorders. That's what hooked me initially. I genuinely thought we were working on something that could help people. But around 6 months in, I noticed things getting weird. Research goals kept shifting, and suddenly we were being pushed to amplify aggressive responses instead of controlling them. They weren't trying to cure anything. They were deliberately rewiring primate brain chemistry to bypass impulse control centers, creating uncontrollable rage states. I walked when I realized we weren't developing medicine. We were building a weapon.
A weapon? Are you seriously telling me Cambridge University is developing some kind of rage-inducing bioweapon right under everyone's noses?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. Look, I found the money trail. The project has hidden military funding channels that don't appear in any public documentation. I uncovered financial transfers from entities tied directly to defense research. Why would the military pump money into a neurological study about aggression unless they saw combat applications? The whole setup was calculated from the beginning. They split the research team in two. My group worked on what they called the inhibitor therapy, supposedly developing treatments for aggression disorders. We were completely walled off from the other team, the behavioral modification group. Classic compartmentalization, but I managed to access their data. What they were really doing, they weren't studying Ebola as a delivery system for an inhibitor at all. They were weaponizing it. They took a recombinant strain of Ebola and engineered it to target specific regions of the brain, primarily the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. The virus doesn't kill like normal Ebola. Instead, it rewires neural pathways to amplify rage responses while shutting down inhibition centers. The genius, and I mean that in the most terrifying way, was how they modified the virus to cross the blood-brain barrier so efficiently. Ebola normally doesn't do that, but they spliced in proteins that give it unprecedented access to neural tissue. And the transmission rate, they accelerated it beyond anything that could occur naturally. This isn't just a modified pathogen, it's a complete perversion of nature.
I've got to ask what everyone's thinking. Could this thing actually get out? I mean, we all lived through a pandemic. We've seen what happens when containment fails.
That's what terrifies me most about this whole situation. The security protocols at Cambridge look solid on paper, but they were designed for conventional pathogens with predictable incubation periods. The virus they engineered is nothing like that. It works almost instantly. We're talking seconds to minutes from exposure to full transformation. One moment, someone's completely normal. The next, they're consumed by uncontrollable rage. And now someone's missing from that facility after the breach. The police aren't saying it publicly, but I have contacts there. They told me what really happened. The scientists and activists didn't die from the pathogen. They were shot by tactical response teams after they started violently attacking each other and the security personnel. Classic cover-up. The authorities are calling it a containment protocol, but they're burying the truth that these people transformed almost instantly and became uncontrollably violent. And here's the really scary part. One of the activists wasn't accounted for among the casualties. They spotted this person on security cameras fleeing into the woods behind the complex, moving strangely, erratically. Do you understand what that means? If that person was exposed to the virus during the break-in, they'd have been actively infected within minutes. They could be out there right now, in populated areas, spreading this thing before anyone realizes what's happening. Those lab chimps weren't ordinary test subjects. They were infected with the recombinant Ebola strain, specifically engineered to trigger immediate neurological changes. The videos I've seen of them, the transformation happens in seconds, complete personality erasure, pure aggression, and the virus transmits through any bodily fluid. Blood, saliva, even a single drop is enough. With how fast it works, by the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's already too late.
Hold up. Are you saying this thing might already be loose? The mainstream media is reporting this as some minor incident that's fully contained.
Of course, that's their line. Standard playbook: minimize, downplay, control the narrative at all costs. I'm not claiming there's definitely been a containment failure, but we should be watching Cambridge like hawks over the next few days. The lead researcher, brilliant guy, terrifying ethics, used to talk about creating the perfect weapon, something that turns a target population against itself without revealing the external attack source. He called it weaponized rage. If even a trace of this got out, Christ, I don't want to fearmonger here, but it wouldn't look like normal disease outbreak. You'd see escalating waves of unexplained violence.
Can you break down exactly what this virus does to people? I mean, we hear rage, but what does that actually look like in someone who's infected?
It's like nothing you've ever seen. This isn't just making people angry, it's a complete neurological hijacking. The virus targets specific regions of the brain, particularly the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. It essentially overrides the entire impulse control system while simultaneously cranking up the threat response to maximum. The infected don't just get violent, they become something else entirely. All higher cognitive functions shut down. No reasoning, no recognition, no restraint whatsoever, just pure, unfiltered rage directed at anything uninfected. They don't feel pain, don't respond to threats, don't tire like normal humans. All metabolic limiters get bypassed. Most terrifying is how fast it happens. In the primate trials, we documented full behavioral conversion in under 20 seconds from initial exposure. One moment you have a normal, healthy chimp. Next moment it's transformed into something unrecognizable, attacking everything in sight with unimaginable violence.
Jesus Christ. What about transmission? How does someone catch this nightmare?
That's where it gets even more disturbing. It started as blood-borne transmission only, typical for this class of virus. But the later variants they were working on, they engineered enhanced transmission vectors. Blood, saliva, any bodily fluid can potentially carry infectious particles. The viral load required for infection is incredibly small too. Microscopic amounts can trigger conversion, and the infected become, well, motivated spreaders is the clinical term they used. They instinctively attempt to transmit through bites, scratches, any means of introducing infected fluids into a new host. What keeps me awake at night is how the infection changes behavior to maximize spread. The infected don't just attack randomly, they prioritize creating new infections. It's like the virus rewires the host to serve its reproductive strategy. I've never seen anything like it. This level of host manipulation is unprecedented in virology.
Okay, wait. Important question. Is there any treatment, any way to stop this if you're infected?
None that I saw in development. Once infection occurs, the neurological changes appear irreversible. There's a cascade effect in the brain. Certain structures are physically altered by the virus. From everything I observed, there's no coming back from that. Standard antivirals are completely ineffective. This thing isn't like influenza or even HIV. It integrates with neural tissue in ways that make it virtually impossible to target without destroying the host brain itself. And it replicates with extraordinary speed, outpacing any conventional immune response.
What about containment? I mean, if this does get out, how hard would it be to stop?
Nearly impossible once it reaches critical mass. The incubation to transmission window is practically non-existent. someone gets infected and becomes infectious to others almost immediately. There's no period where they're carrying the virus but not contagious, which makes standard quarantine protocols ineffective. The standard epidemiological models completely break down with this pathogen. Traditional containment assumes rational behavior from the infected population, like people with flu staying home when sick. But this virus specifically drives the infected to seek out and attack uninfected individuals. It's weaponized aggression with a reproductive strategy. In the simulations I saw, urban areas would be completely overrun within 72 hours of initial outbreak. Rural containment might be possible, but only with immediate, extreme measures that no democratic government would implement quickly enough. By the time they realized what they were dealing with, it would already be too late.
You've put yourself in serious danger coming forward. What should people do with this information?
Just keep your eyes open. Watch for patterns of unusual aggressive behavior, especially around Cambridge. When you see reports of violent incidents, don't swallow the official explanations. And if you know anyone in that area, maybe suggest they take a vacation somewhere far away, soon. I hate sounding like a doomsday prophet, but I've seen the research data firsthand. I know exactly what this thing can do. The truly nightmarish part is how fast it could spread in the general population. The incubation period is frighteningly short, and transmission, well, let's just say they've engineered it for maximum efficiency. One final thing I need to emphasize. If you ever encounter someone who appears infected, do not attempt to help them. Do not approach. Do not try to reason with them. The person you knew is effectively gone. What remains is just a vehicle for the virus, a biological machine programmed for one purpose, creating more infected. Your only option is immediate evacuation from the area. Nothing else will save you.
Jesus, Brock. Heavy doesn't begin to describe this. We're going to track the Cambridge situation closely. Listeners, if you're in that area and notice anything unusual, anything at all, hit us up through the secure channels on our website. We'll be back after this quick break with more explosive revelations about the Infected with Rage experiment. This is Jimmy Crystal, and you're locked into the Truth Underground, where we dig up the secrets they're desperate to bury.
BBC Radio 4. I'm Jim Mitchell with an urgent story developing out of Cambridge. We've just received word of a serious incident at the Cambridge Neuroscience Complex. Yes, the same place where animal rights activists broke in yesterday and all personnel were killed. Police have confirmed multiple new deaths this morning, though we're still piecing together what exactly happened. Emergency teams rushed to the scene just after 9 a.m. following what officials describe as a violent altercation involving maintenance staff who entered the building. Ambulances and hazmat teams are swarming the site, and police have thrown up a cordon several blocks around the building. The university's cancelled all classes, telling students and staff to stay well clear of the area until further notice. This incident comes just hours after authorities announced they had failed to locate the unidentified individual who fled the facility during yesterday's initial breach. It remains unclear if there's a direct connection between that person's escape and today's events, but the timing has raised serious concerns among health officials. We've got our correspondent Selina Bell at the scene. Selina, what's the situation look like from where you are?
Jim, they've pushed us back about 200 metres from the main entrance, and that's as close as anyone's getting right now. The atmosphere here is totally transformed from yesterday's relative calm. More emergency vehicles keep arriving by the minute, including specialised teams in what I can only describe as full biohazard suits, the head-to-toe kind you'd see in outbreak movies. Police have already expanded the perimeter twice since I arrived, pushing everyone further and further back. We've seen several ambulances leaving under police escort, and that's unusual. My sources tell me they're headed to a specialised secure medical facility, rather than regular hospitals, which suggests serious concerns about some kind of contamination. I've been told that the initial incident occurred when a maintenance crew entered the building early this morning to begin assessment for decontamination procedures. They reportedly encountered someone inside who was not authorised to be there, possibly a trespasser who entered overnight. What happened next is still being pieced together, but it resulted in multiple casualties. I managed to grab a quick word with a lab tech who was evacuated from the building next door. David, tell us what you saw this morning before they got you out.
It was absolute chaos in there. I'd just badged in for my shift when alarms started blaring everywhere. Security guards were shoving everyone toward the exits. But before I got out, I saw them bringing some maintenance workers out on stretchers. They weren't even like people anymore. The way they thrashed around, the noises coming out of them.
What do you mean they weren't like people?
They were violent, completely out of control, thrashing, trying to bite anyone who came close. One of them was so wild it took 3 guards to hold him down. I heard someone mention animal-borne pathogen exposure. That's when they kicked evacuation into high gear for the whole...
Sir, you need to come with us immediately. No unauthorized statements to the press.
As you just heard, Jim, they're clamping down hard on information coming out of here. I've also learned that police have expanded their search for the missing person from yesterday's incident to include several residential areas neighbouring the university. There are reports of unusual disturbances in at least 2 locations that may be connected. I'll keep working my sources and update you as soon as I learn more. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks for that report, Selena. Joining me now is Dr. Frank Gleeson from the UK Health Security Agency. Dr. Gleeson, you've been working with this research team. What can you tell us about what's happening there?
I can confirm there's been an exposure incident involving maintenance personnel who entered the facility this morning. We're still assessing exactly what happened, but early indications point to some kind of type contagion that targets the central nervous system, yet likely the same pathogen that caused yesterday's tragic deaths of the research staff and activists. I want to make absolutely clear that from everything we know right now, this isn't airborne. It seems to require direct fluid contact, like blood or saliva, for transmission. We've activated all our containment protocols, and public risk remains extremely low at this time. What's particularly concerning is the speed with which this pathogen appears to affect the human nervous system. This is why we're taking such extraordinary precautions with the current situation and urgently trying to locate the individual who fled the facility yesterday.
We're hearing rumours of disturbances in residential areas near the university. Could these be connected to the missing person from yesterday's incident?
We're working closely with police to investigate several reports of unusual behaviour in the Cambridge area. While I can't confirm a direct connection to yesterday's escaped individual, we're treating these incidents as potentially linked and approaching them with appropriate caution. The symptoms we're seeing include extreme aggression and agitation, along with physical changes we're still working to understand. If anyone experiences unusual symptoms, especially after having contact with someone displaying erratic or aggressive behavior, they should call emergency services immediately. And this is important. Do not go to regular hospitals or clinics on your own. In the meantime, we've established a specialized containment ward at Addenbrooke's Hospital for anyone showing potential symptoms. The facility is equipped with the necessary isolation protocols to prevent any further spread.
Dr. Gleeson, let me ask you directly, should the public be worried about a wider outbreak?
Based on what we know right now, we believe the risk of community spread can be contained with proper precautions. However, the situation is evolving rapidly, and we're taking every possible measure to prevent further transmission. I want to emphasize that anyone who notices unusual behavior in others, particularly extreme aggression, confusion, or physical symptoms like bloodshot eyes or unusual pallor, should maintain distance and contact authorities immediately. Under no circumstances should people approach individuals displaying these symptoms. The Health Security Agency will update the public hourly as we gather more information. For now, people in Cambridge should exercise heightened awareness, avoid unnecessary public gatherings, and stay tuned to official channels for updates.
Thank you for that information, Dr. Gleeson. We'll keep following this story throughout the day. In related news, the Home Office has just announced an emergency review of security protocols at all government-funded research facilities across the country. The Home Secretary is expected to make a statement within the hour regarding enhanced security measures being implemented across Cambridge. Reports suggest these may include increased police presence, health checkpoints, and a potential curfew for certain areas. For those just joining us, emergency services are responding to a serious incident at the Cambridge Neuroscience Complex. Multiple fatalities have been confirmed. Authorities have set up a security perimeter and are urging the public to avoid the area completely. We'll bring you more details as soon as we have them. This is Jim Mitchell for BBC Radio 4. BBC Radio 4. Evening Report. Jim Mitchell here. We're tracking a troubling development at St Thomas's Hospital in central London, where several emergency room staff were violently attacked by a patient this afternoon. The incident erupted during treatment of someone transferred from Cambridge following yesterday's research facility disaster. Hospital officials confirm 4 staff members were injured, 2 of them seriously. Metropolitan Police have swarmed the hospital, though they're being tight-lipped about exactly what happened. This comes as disturbing videos flood social media showing people in Cambridge and now possibly London exhibiting bizarre, uncontrolled aggression. Officials continue brushing these off as unfounded rumours about some new disease. Let's go straight to our correspondent, Selina Bell, who's at St Thomas's Hospital. Selina, what are you seeing?
Jim, there's a palpable tension hanging over St Thomas's right now. I'm positioned across from the main entrance where police have established a heavy presence in just the last few hours. They're particularly focused on the East Wing, which contains several specialised units, including the ICU, where Jim Williams, remember that bicycle courier from the accident last week, is still being treated. Staff have been ordered not to talk to us, but I've watched several teams in containment gear entering the building. They've cordoned off certain areas inside, with makeshift restricted access signs appearing on some floors. You can see them from the lobby. Regular ambulances are being diverted to other hospitals, while unmarked vehicles with special clearance are rushing through a side entrance. Families of patients already inside tell me they've been asked to leave with barely any explanation, creating a scene of confusion and fear outside the main doors. I managed to speak briefly with a nurse, she wouldn't give her name, who told me the ward where Jim Williams is being treated is now under observation after what she called an exposure concern. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks for that report, Selina. Joining us now is Joel Miller, spokesperson for the Department of Health. Mr. Miller, what's really happening at St Thomas's, and is this connected to Cambridge?
Thanks for having me, Jim. First, I want to reassure your listeners that what you're seeing is simply standard safety protocols kicking in to protect patients and staff alike. Public health and safety remains our absolute top priority. We've transferred a handful of people who were at the Cambridge incident to specialized medical facilities for monitoring and treatment. One of those patients was admitted to St. Thomas's earlier today and became distressed during a routine check. Hospital security quickly got things under control with help from police. These measures are purely precautionary. The health department is working hand in hand with the UK Health Security Agency to monitor anyone who might have been exposed and isolate them where necessary.
People are increasingly worried about whatever this illness is, Mr. Miller. Social media is awash with reports of aggressive behaviour and strange symptoms. Are you giving us the full story here?
I completely understand those concerns, Jim. But I'd strongly caution against trusting unverified social media posts, which often blow isolated incidents out of proportion and trigger unnecessary panic. What we're dealing with is contained. It affects only a small group of people directly exposed at Cambridge. The UKHSA is digging into exactly what this exposure involves. Meanwhile, we're taking every possible precaution, stepping up monitoring at hospitals and proactively screening anyone potentially affected. We're committed to providing regular updates as we learn more. I urge your listeners to rely only on official channels for information. If there were any real threat to public health, we would communicate that immediately and clearly. No one's hiding anything here.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Dr. Frank Gleeson is back with us tonight. Dr. Gleeson, as someone who knows the Cambridge research intimately, what can you tell us about the symptoms you're seeing in these cases?
From the cases I've reviewed, Jim, we're seeing a frightening pattern. Extreme aggression, blood-red eyes, high fever, and excessive drooling. The affected individuals completely lose the ability to think rationally. They're driven purely by primitive instincts, especially territorial aggression. The symptoms hit hard and fast, often showing up within minutes of exposure instead of days. But I want to stress that it still appears to spread only through direct contact with bodily fluids, which is why isolation works so effectively. Medical teams are fighting to control the symptoms while we work to understand what's actually happening in the brain. The behavioral changes suggest massive disruption to the frontal lobe and limbic system, essentially the parts that make us human and control our impulses.
Is there a connection to the infected with rage research we discussed earlier?
That's certainly one avenue we're investigating. The research was looking at brain pathways tied to aggression, so there are obvious parallels to what we're seeing now. But jumping to conclusions before we have complete lab results would be irresponsible. What I can tell you is that health authorities are taking this incredibly seriously. We're throwing every resource at containing affected individuals, treating their symptoms, and preventing any wider spread. Our public health system is built to handle situations exactly like this.
Thank you, Dr. Gleeson. The Health Department has set up a dedicated hotline for anyone worried about potential exposure or showing unusual symptoms. Officials are warning people not to transport symptomatic individuals to hospitals on their own. Wait for specialised response teams. This is Jim Mitchell for BBC Radio 4. We'll keep tracking developments in Cambridge and London with updates throughout the night.
My brothers and sisters, we gather today under extraordinary circumstances. The news from Cambridge, the strange violence spreading through our communities has left many of us frightened and confused. I've received countless calls this week from members of our congregation asking the same question, Pastor, what does this mean? Is this God's judgment upon us? I don't stand before you today claiming to know God's exact purpose in these troubling events. But I do know this, throughout history, moments of crisis have always called us back to fundamental truths. When mankind pushes boundaries that perhaps weren't meant to be crossed, there are consequences. These researchers manipulating the very nature of rage and aggression in their laboratories, did they ever stop to consider the moral implications of their work? Pride has always been humanity's downfall. We convince ourselves we can control what we create until suddenly, inevitably, we cannot. What we're witnessing now, this rage infection, this violence, it strips away everything that makes us human. It reduces God's children to creatures of pure instinct and aggression. If that isn't a reflection of sin's destructive power, I don't know what is. Some will say I'm being dramatic. They'll point to scientific explanations, to containment measures, to the authorities who assure us everything is under control. But I've lived long enough to recognize when something goes beyond ordinary understanding, the speed of this contagion, the complete transformation it causes in those infected. There's something almost biblical about it. Look at what this infection does. It turns neighbor against neighbor, destroys rational thought, eliminates compassion and restraint. Isn't that exactly what happens when we abandon God's guidance, when we reject the divine spark within us? This outbreak makes visible what sin has always done to the human soul. But I'm not here to spread fear. Even in our darkest moments, faith offers both shelter and clarity. God is our refuge and strength, the psalmist tells us, an ever-present help in trouble. While others place their trust solely in quarantines and containment zones, we have an additional source of protection, the wisdom and comfort that comes through prayer and community. I believe this crisis will test us in ways we cannot yet imagine. What began in Cambridge will not end there. The authorities may downplay the danger, but I sense this is just the beginning. In the days ahead, we must watch out for one another, check on the vulnerable among us, and yes, follow the guidance of health officials. Faith doesn't mean foolishness or recklessness. Let us pray together now for those already affected, for those working to contain this outbreak, and for the wisdom to recognize God's presence even in these troubling times. Whatever comes, we face it not as individuals, but as a community of faith.
This is the emergency alert system. The following message is transmitted at the request of the Metropolitan Police Service. This is not a test. Police are responding to multiple incidents of extreme violence in East London. Citizens are advised to remain indoors and secure all entrances to homes and businesses until further notice. If travel is absolutely necessary, avoid the following areas: Whitechapel, Bethnal Green, Hackney, and Stratford. The public is urged to report any unusual behavior or encounters with infected individuals to the emergency hotline at 0800 232. Do not attempt to approach or restrain persons exhibiting extreme aggression. If confronted, seek immediate shelter and barricade entry points. Additional police and military personnel are being deployed to affected areas. Further updates will be provided as the situation develops. This emergency broadcast will repeat every 30 minutes. This concludes this emergency alert system notification.
BBC Radio 4 evening broadcast. Jim Mitchell here with breaking news on the rapidly deteriorating situation across London and the South East. Police and emergency services are racing to respond to what officials are calling widespread civil disturbances erupting in multiple boroughs throughout the capital. The Met Police confirm violent incidents have surged dramatically since dawn, concentrated primarily in East London areas, highlighted in yesterday's emergency alert. But now similar outbreaks are spreading into central London, with reports of attacks alarmingly close to government buildings in Westminster. Despite the chaos and the flood of disturbing videos sweeping across social media, authorities insist they haven't lost control. Home Office spokespeople blame mass hysteria and opportunistic criminals for the violence, while reluctantly acknowledging links to the Cambridge research incident earlier this week. We've got our correspondent Selina Bell near a police barricade in Hackney. Selina, paint us a picture of what you're seeing.
Jim, I'm about half a kilometre from Hackney Central Station, where police and military units have established a massive presence since first light. The wail of sirens hasn't let up for hours, and helicopters, both police and military, keep thundering overhead. They're telling us this is just civil unrest, but I'm watching something far more terrifying unfold. From where I'm standing, I can see thick black smoke billowing from at least 3 buildings inside the cordon. We've been hearing sporadic gunfire all afternoon, despite official claims that lethal force hasn't been authorised. What's truly chilling are the stories from people who've managed to escape. They're not describing organised riots or protests, but seemingly random savage attacks by people exhibiting extreme... Wait, something's happening right behind us. There's some kind of breach at the checkpoint about 50 metres back. Police are rushing toward it. I can't quite make out what's happening, but people are running in our direction. We need to move. The police line is collapsing. I can see officers grappling with... People are forcing their way through the barricade. They're moving strangely, running with this unnatural, jerking motion. The officers are trying to... Everyone get to the van. They're coming right at us.
Selina, do you copy? We've lost contact with our correspondent in Hackney. We'll try to re-establish communication as quickly as possible. I apologise for that disturbing interruption. While our technical team works to reconnect with our field crew, we're receiving reports of similar disruptions at multiple locations across the city. Emergency calls have overwhelmed the 999 system, with wait times now exceeding 30 minutes in some areas. I'm being told we have a caller on the line, someone who claims to have just escaped from the Hackney area. We haven't verified this information, but given the urgency of the situation, hello, you're on BBC Radio 4.
They're not rioters, they're not protesters. The people attacking, there's something wrong with them. I saw a woman, my neighbour. She was fine yesterday. Today she attacked her own husband, tore at him with her bare hands. His blood was all over her face, and she just kept attacking. Then she spit up blood all over his face. And the husband got back up and started twitching and ran away like he was hunting something. Never seen anything like it in me life.
Sir, can you tell us your location right now? Are you somewhere safe?
I'm in my car, heading north. The roads are jammed, people abandoning vehicles, military blocking major intersections. They're shooting people who show symptoms, not warning shots, kill shots. I saw them drop 3 people at the checkpoint on Mars Street.
The soldiers are terrified too. One of them told me to get as far from London as possible. Said it's spreading faster than they can contain it. Called it a biological event. Not riots, not unrest. Something in the blood makes people go insane. They attack anything that moves. Their eyes turn red.
Sir, the authorities have been clear that this is a civil disturbance, possibly exacerbated by exposure to an experimental compound, but certainly not...
A lie. It's everywhere. My brother works at Royal London Hospital. They had over 60 cases by noon. Staff getting attacked by patients. Infection spreading inside the hospital. They've locked down entire wards. People turning in minutes after exposure. Blood is how it spreads. If it gets in your system, you're gone. Just gone. I have to go. Traffic's moving. Tell people to stay away from the infected. Tell them to...
We've lost that call. I want to emphasise that we cannot verify that account, and it contradicts official information from health authorities. We're going to go now to a statement from government spokesman Joel Miller, recorded just a couple of hours ago, about the ongoing crisis.
The government is addressing the isolated violent incidents occurring in certain London boroughs. These events, while deeply concerning, remain contained within specific areas, and emergency services are mounting an appropriate response. Military units have been deployed to support police operations and maintain public safety.
We're aware of disturbing footage circulating online, much of which has been taken out of context or deliberately manipulated to incite panic. We strongly urge citizens to rely solely on official information channels and comply with all emergency directives. A limited curfew takes effect in affected boroughs at 8 p.m. tonight. All residents must remain indoors and report any suspicious activity via the emergency hotline. Essential workers will receive guidance from employers about movement authorization. I want to be absolutely clear. The situation, while serious, is being managed with every resource at our disposal. The health incidents from Cambridge have been identified and isolated. What we're seeing now is mainly opportunistic chaos feeding on public anxiety. Rest assured, order will be restored quickly.
That was government spokesman Joel Miller. We're still trying to re-establish contact with Selina Bell in Hackney. Meanwhile, we're getting reports of new military checkpoints appearing on major routes into central London. Transport for London has shut down multiple tube stations, especially on the Central and Victoria lines. National Rail has suspended all services into Liverpool Street and King's Cross until further notice, according to a statement just released. The NHS has triggered emergency protocols across all London hospitals. They're redirecting non-urgent cases to facilities beyond the M25. St Thomas's Hospital, site of an alarming incident earlier this week, has now been completely evacuated, according to our sources inside the health service. I'm getting word that we have reconnected with another member of our field team who was with Selina Bell in Hackney. David, are you there? What's your situation?
Jim, I'm sheltering in a pub about 3 blocks from where we lost contact. The situation is, I don't even know how to describe it. It's not riots, it's not protest, it's something else entirely. Our van was swarmed. At least 15 people just charged the barricade all at once, tore through the police line like it wasn't there. They moved wrong, jerky, animal-like, no self-preservation instinct at all. When they breached the line, police opened fire. But there were so many they just kept coming. I saw one man take 2 rounds to the chest and still tackle an officer to the ground. Then he just vomited blood all over his face. Then the officer started twitching and got up.
David, what about Selina and the rest of your crew?
We got separated in the chaos. I saw Selina and Michael make it to the production van. They were driving away when I lost sight of them. Mark didn't make it. One of them grabbed him. We couldn't reach him in time. The blood, Jim. That's what the rumours are saying. It's in the blood. If their blood gets in your system through a cut, a scratch, anything, you turn into one of them. I watched it happen to a police officer. Got splashed when they shot one of the infected. Within a minute, he started convulsing. Then his eyes, they changed. He turned on his own unit.
David, the official guidance is that we're dealing with mass panic and isolated incidents of violence. What you're describing sounds...
Listen to me. They're lying. The military knows exactly what this is. I heard them on their comms before everything went to hell. They're calling it code rage. They have specific protocols. No prisoners, no mercy. They're not trying to arrest anyone. They're exterminating. They're getting closer. I need to move. Don't tell people to stay indoors. Tell them to get out of London entirely. This is spreading too fast to contain. I don't think the government entirely. Oh God, they found me. I need to...
David, are you there? We've lost contact again. I'm being informed that we're receiving similar reports from across London, from Hackney to Camden, Islington to Lambeth, unconfirmed accounts of violence that exceed anything normally associated with civil unrest. At this time, we at the BBC can only report what we can verify. The facts we can confirm are these. Multiple neighbourhoods in London are experiencing severe disturbances. Military and police presence has increased dramatically in the past 2 hours. Travel restrictions are in effect across Greater London, and casualties are being reported, though we have no confirmed numbers. Public health officials continue to insist this situation stems from the Cambridge laboratory incident, but that the effects are temporary and containable. We'll continue to monitor official channels and bring you updates as they become available. I'm now being informed that BBC Broadcasting House itself is implementing emergency security protocols. All non-essential staff are being evacuated, and we'll be continuing our broadcast from a secure location shortly. Please stay tuned to this frequency for emergency updates and instructions. For anyone in affected areas, the emergency hotline remains open, though be prepared for long wait times due to extremely high call volume. This is Jim Mitchell for BBC Radio 4. Stay with us for emergency broadcasts as the situation develops. We interrupt all programming for this urgent address from the Prime Minister.
My fellow Britons, tonight I must speak to you about the grave public health crisis unfolding across London and surrounding areas. Your government is mobilising every available resource to contain what our experts have identified as an aggressive neurological contagion. The military deployment you've witnessed is not cause for alarm, but a necessary measure to ensure public safety while our medical teams battle this unprecedented threat. Over recent days, you've seen increasingly strict security measures implemented throughout affected regions. I recognise these actions have disrupted lives and caused deep anxiety. I want to assure you that every decision, however difficult, has been made with one overriding purpose: protecting innocent lives and halting this contagion's spread. This outbreak stems from a laboratory incident at a Cambridge research facility. Despite immediate containment efforts, the extraordinary nature of this pathogen has created challenges unlike anything in modern medical history. Infected individuals exhibit neurological symptoms that trigger extreme violent behavior, rendering traditional quarantine methods dangerously inadequate. I wish to address directly the disturbing footage that has circulated online, showing incidents of extraordinary violence in several London boroughs. These are not, as some have irresponsibly claimed, acts of terrorism or civil unrest. They are manifestations of this infection, a pathogen that fundamentally alters brain function and eliminates normal human restraint. The individuals in these videos are victims of a medical condition, not perpetrators of deliberate violence. Our understanding of this contagion continues to evolve. Based on the most recent medical evidence, the pathogen appears to target specific regions of the brain responsible for impulse control and emotional regulation. Once infected, individuals experience rapid neurological changes resulting in heightened aggression and a complete loss of normal social behaviors. The speed of symptom onset presents unprecedented challenges for identification and isolation of cases. As I speak to you, we've established secure containment zones across East and Southeast London. These areas now operate under direct military authority, with specialised medical teams working around the clock to identify and treat the infected. I must be absolutely clear, these zones are restricted for everyone's protection. Any unauthorised attempt to cross these boundaries endangers not only yourself, but countless others. Today I've signed emergency powers into effect, granting expanded authority to military and police forces operating within affected areas. These extraordinary measures include mandatory evacuation orders, establishment of secure quarantine facilities, and authorization of necessary force to halt infection spread. I take these steps with the utmost gravity, knowing they are essential to our nation's survival. Let me outline specifically what these emergency measures entail. First, a mandatory curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. in all areas bordering containment zones. Second, enhanced screening at all transportation hubs nationwide, with particular focus on routes departing from Greater London. Third, temporary suspension of public gatherings exceeding 50 persons throughout the UK. Fourth, redeployment of NHS resources to establish specialised treatment facilities in strategic locations. And fifth, authorisation for military personnel to implement containment protocols without standard civilian oversight. I understand these measures may appear extreme. They represent a temporary but necessary limitation on freedoms we all hold dear. However, the nature of this threat demands immediate and decisive action. Every hour we delay potentially means thousands more exposed to this contagion. We cannot afford hesitation when faced with a pathogen of this severity and transmissibility. We are actively investigating potential foreign involvement in this outbreak. Preliminary evidence raises troubling questions about whether the Cambridge research may have been deliberately compromised by hostile actors seeking to destabilize our country. I've ordered comprehensive security reviews of all sensitive research facilities and enhanced protection for critical infrastructure nationwide. I want to address the widespread rumors and misinformation circulating on social media platforms. There are those claiming the government has withheld crucial information or underreported casualty figures. Let me be perfectly clear. We are committed to complete transparency during this crisis. The situation remains fluid, and information is updated as our understanding evolves, but we are sharing all verified data with the public as it becomes available. I strongly urge all citizens to rely solely on official government channels and established news outlets for accurate information. To our international allies and partners, We deeply appreciate your offers of assistance and expertise. We're working closely with the World Health Organization and relevant global authorities to share critical information and develop effective treatment protocols. This crisis transcends borders and demands unified global response. To British citizens outside affected areas, maintain your daily routines with heightened vigilance. The government will provide frequent updates through official channels. Follow local authority guidance precisely and report any concerning behavior without delay. Above all, remain calm and support one another. In our darkest moments, our national character, our unity and resilience has always been our greatest strength. I must emphasize the critical importance of immediate self-isolation for anyone exhibiting early symptoms. These include unusual irritability, heightened sensitivity to light and sound, rapid breathing, dilated pupils, and unexplained aggression. If you or someone in your household displays these symptoms, do not, I repeat, do not attempt to travel to hospital facilities. Instead, contact emergency services via the dedicated hotline established for this purpose. Specially trained response teams will provide appropriate assistance. To those trapped within containment zones, help is coming. Medical teams and supply convoys are en route to provide essential services. Your absolute compliance with military and emergency personnel instructions is critical. Your cooperation may determine whether we resolve this crisis or succumb to it. I want to acknowledge the extraordinary courage shown by our frontline responders. The doctors, nurses, paramedics, police officers, military personnel, and countless others who face this threat directly deserve our profound gratitude and respect. Many have already made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their fellow citizens. Their dedication reminds us of the very best of British character and resolve. This moment demands that famous British resolve that has carried us through world wars, economic catastrophe, and countless national emergencies. We will overcome this threat as we have conquered every challenge throughout our proud history with courage, determination, and unwavering commitment to one another. We face dark days ahead. I will not pretend otherwise, but united in purpose, disciplined in action, and steadfast in our determination, we will emerge from this crisis. The United Kingdom has weathered countless storms throughout its long history. This challenge, however unprecedented, will ultimately prove no different. God bless and protect you all, and God save the United Kingdom.
You've just heard an emergency address from the Prime Minister regarding the escalating public health crisis. Stay tuned for ongoing emergency broadcasts with critical updates and instructions throughout the evening.
This is the emergency alert system. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United Kingdom Ministry of Defence. This is not a test. Military security operations are now in effect in the following London boroughs: Hackney, Tower Hamlets, Newham, Waltham Forest, Barking and Dagenham, Greenwich, Southwark, and Lambeth. All residents in these areas are ordered to remain in their homes until further notice. Individuals attempting to move through these areas without proper authorization will be subject to detention. Military checkpoints have been established on all major roads. Do not attempt to bypass these checkpoints under any circumstances. Multiple cases of rage-affected individuals have been confirmed throughout the affected zones. These individuals are extremely dangerous and should not be approached. If you encounter someone exhibiting signs of infection, including extreme aggression, bloodshot eyes, or erratic movement, secure your location immediately and alert authorities if communication is possible. Residents in adjacent postal codes should prepare for potential evacuation, gather essential medications, identification documents, and limited supplies. Do not attempt to evacuate unless specifically instructed to do so by official emergency broadcasts. This alert will repeat hourly. Further instructions will follow as the situation develops. This concludes this emergency alert system notification.
BBC Radio 4, Jim Mitchell here, continuing our coverage of what's now officially a national emergency. The government has just declared martial law across Greater London as we enter day 7 of this crisis. Military forces have thrown up a massive containment perimeter around what officials are now openly calling the infection zone. This morning, Defence Ministry officials announced they're sending in additional army units to beef up checkpoints along the M25 motorway ring. They've halted all civilian movement across this boundary, with exceptions only for essential personnel carrying special authorisation codes. I need to correct our earlier report. The quarantine zone now encompasses all of Greater London, plus chunks of the surrounding home counties. Eyewitness accounts suggest the military is implementing what's being called Protocol Wildfire, a previously classified contingency plan developed for extreme biological threats. This protocol includes the authority to use lethal force without warning against anyone attempting to breach containment barriers, a measure never before implemented on British soil during peacetime. Many of you have asked about our correspondent Selina Bell, whose broadcast from Hackney was violently interrupted 3 days ago. I'm relieved to report she's safe, having managed to escape with most of her crew during the chaos. We tragically lost crew technician David Long and camera operator Mark Andrews. Our thoughts and prayers go out to their families and all families affected by this crisis. Selina is back in the field after receiving medical clearance at a military checkpoint on the M25 near Brentwood. Selina.
Jim, I'm standing at the eastern edge of what soldiers here are calling the containment zone. What I'm seeing is simply staggering, unlike anything I've ever covered. What started as a basic police roadblock has morphed into a full-blown military fortification in just a day and a half. Armoured vehicles stretch across the motorway, with heavily armed soldiers processing the desperate stream of Londoners trying to flee. Army engineers have built what looks like a permanent barrier cutting across all lanes, reinforced with concrete blocks and coils of razor wire. Military choppers roar overhead on constant patrols, and fighter jets have been screaming over London all morning. The evacuation process is brutal. Everyone trying to leave gets put through intense medical screening, temperature checks, blood tests, even neurological exams. I've watched them haul away several people who failed these screenings, taking them to isolation facilities whose locations they refuse to disclose. Medical personnel in full biohazard suits conduct what they call aggressive screening, a multi-stage process taking nearly an hour per person. I observed one family being separated when the father displayed what a medical officer described as concerning neurological markers. Despite showing no obvious symptoms, he was immediately isolated and transported away in a sealed military vehicle. I've been talking with John, who's from Romford, and has been trying to get his family out since yesterday. John, tell us what you're going through.
It's been absolute hell. We've been stuck in this bloody queue for 15 hours now. They keep changing the rules, shuffling people around, splitting up families for different tests. Just an hour ago, they dragged a bloke away just because he lost his temper about the wait. He wasn't sick, just a dad furious about being trapped here with his hungry kids for hours without even basic facilities. The soldiers won't tell us a damn thing about what's happening inside London. My mum's still in Hackney, and I haven't heard from her in 3 days. All the phone networks are dead. Internet's completely gone in most areas. These military types keep parroting that everyone's being safely evacuated, but we're hearing something very different from people who've made it out.
What exactly are you hearing from other evacuees?
They're shooting people, Selina. Not just the obviously infected, anyone with a slight fever or who gets too agitated. A woman in the queue told us soldiers gunned down her neighbour just for refusing to leave his house during evacuation. Said they didn't even test him, just assumed he was infected and, Christ, you can imagine what happened next. They call this ring fencing and claim it's about containing the infection. But I reckon it's more about containing witnesses to what's really going on. This isn't the smooth evacuation they're selling on the news. This is, I don't have words for it. It's not Britain anymore. That's for bloody sure.
Large plumes of black smoke have been rising continuously behind military lines. When questioned, personnel claim they're destroying contaminated materials, but evacuees report seeing body bags being transported toward these locations. Military commanders have flatly refused our interview requests, directing all questions to the Defence Ministry press office in Whitehall. That office, however, hasn't responded to any inquiries for over 36 hours now. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks for that report, Selina. Joining us now is government spokesperson Joel Miller. Mr. Miller, how do you respond to these disturbing allegations about how civilians are being treated during evacuation?
Thanks for having me, Jim. Let me be crystal clear. Protecting uninfected civilians remains our absolute top priority. Yes, the evacuation procedures are tough, but they're designed with one purpose: stopping this infection from breaking out beyond the containment zone. As for allegations about excessive force, all military personnel operate under strict rules of engagement. Lethal force is only authorized when there's clear, immediate danger, specifically when the infected directly threaten others. These measures are harsh, I won't deny that, but they're necessary given the extreme violence exhibited by infected persons. I must categorically reject unverified claims about mass disposal of bodies. The smoke plumes observed are indeed from disposal operations, but they involve contaminated clothing, vehicles, and medical waste, all standard protocol in biohazard containment.
Mr. Miller, we're hearing about complete communications blackouts inside London. How are families supposed to know if their loved ones are even alive?
You're right, the communications inside the containment zone are down, partly from physical damage and partly from deliberate measures to prevent panic and misinformation spreading. We've created a central database of all evacuees who clear checkpoints, which worried family members can access through our emergency information centers. For those still trapped inside, we have military units conducting block-by-block search and rescue operations, focusing on residential areas and gathering survivors at secure extraction points. These operations demand tight coordination and secure communications, which is another reason for restricting civilian communications networks. I understand the terrible anxiety this creates, but restoring normal communications would create massive security risks right now. We've discovered the infected react strongly to sounds, including phone rings and alerts, which has already sabotaged several evacuation attempts.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We now turn to Commander Henry West, who's directing military operations along the southern edge of the containment zone. Commander West, walk us through your current strategy for handling this crisis.
We're focusing on three things right now: holding the perimeters, getting uninfected people out safely, and taking down infected when we have to. We've split the containment zone into sections, quadrants, each with its own escape routes and safe areas. We've got special forces teams going into the worst hit areas, looking for survivors, assessing just how bad it is in there. These are high-risk missions. The infected, they're not moving alone anymore. They travel in groups, attacking anything that moves or makes noise. Our soldiers have protective equipment, and we try to use non-lethal methods when we can. But the safety of our troops and the civilians we're rescuing has to be the priority.
Look, I need to be straight with you about what this really is. It's urban warfare. We're fighting an enemy that can't plan or strategize, but in some areas they outnumber us hundreds to one. That forces us to make impossible decisions about where to commit our resources and, yes, when to use deadly force. We're doing everything we possibly can to protect innocent lives while keeping this infection from spreading throughout the country.
Thank you, Commander. In international developments, the European Union has closed all borders with the United Kingdom, with Ireland, France and the Netherlands implementing similar measures. All international flights to and from UK airports have been indefinitely suspended. The World Health Organization has classified the situation as a public health emergency of international concern and is working with UK authorities to establish monitoring protocols in neighbouring countries. Foreign nationals trapped inside the containment zone are being told to contact their embassies for special evacuation arrangements. Financial markets have responded with severe volatility, with trading in London suspended after the FTSE 100 dropped over 15% in early morning trading. The Bank of England has announced emergency measures to stabilise the pound, which has fallen to historic lows against major currencies. For those in unaffected areas seeking information about loved ones, contact the emergency contact system. We'll continue broadcasting emergency information throughout the day. This is Jim Mitchell for BBC Radio 4.
This is Jimmy Crystal coming to you from, well, let's just say I've had to relocate my studio. If you're picking up this broadcast, you're among the few with access to communication channels outside government control. What's happening in the UK is far worse than what's being reported, and information blackouts are rolling across Europe like a dark tide. The situation has deteriorated so rapidly I can barely keep up. Our original whistleblower from the Cambridge facility, the one who first warned us about the infected with rage experiment, has gone completely dark. Multiple sources confirm that facility has been sanitized by military units. No witnesses, no evidence, no paper trail. Classic government cleanup operation. Folks, I've got a critical guest today, Christian McCaffrey. He's an epidemiologist who's been independently analyzing data from the London outbreak, and his findings completely contradict the official story. Christian, thanks for risking your neck to speak with us.
Appreciate the platform, Jimmy. Let me cut right to it. What's unfolding in Britain isn't some contained incident that standard protocols will handle. My analysis of the limited data available points to something unprecedented in modern disease control. The government narrative portrays a stable containment situation with limited transmission potential. The reality, the R0 value of this contagion, that's how many new infections each case generates, is off the charts. Based on hospital data I've obtained through NHS contacts, we're looking at exponential growth, not the linear pattern they're reporting.
Break that down for us. What does this actually mean for people on the ground?
It means total breakdown within days, not weeks. The most terrifying factor is how incredibly fast this thing works. We're not talking about days or even hours of incubation anymore. The latest cases show people turning within minutes of exposure. One moment they're completely normal, the next they're fully infected and attacking everyone around them. This isn't like any pathogen we've ever documented. It's more like a neurological wildfire. These evacuation centers are death traps. One infected person entering a shelter can create hundreds more in minutes. I've analyzed footage from 3 separate evacuation sites, and the pattern is identical. A single violent incident erupts, security responds, and within 5 minutes, the entire facility descends into chaos. By the time authorities realize what's happening, it's already too late. I've been monitoring evacuation patterns from London, and infection clusters are multiplying exponentially at gathering points across the southeast. It's the perfect storm for catastrophic spread, densely packed people, panic-induced contact, and no way to identify carriers until they're actively turning. The military screening protocols are completely useless. Temperature checks and visual assessments can't detect someone who will transform minutes later.
I've seen footage from inside one of these evacuation centers. Looked more like a concentration camp than a refugee facility. What's happening to people in these places?
The conditions are catastrophic from both humanitarian and epidemiological perspectives. These facilities were never designed for this scale of operation. We're talking about stadiums, conference centers, and school gymnasiums hastily converted to house thousands of traumatized evacuees. Based on whistleblower reports, the screening process is fundamentally flawed. They're using outdated protocols designed for traditional pathogens, temperature readings, visual inspections, basic blood tests. This virus evades all these screening methods during its initial incubation phase.
The UK government insists they've contained this to London. You're saying that's bullshit?
Complete fiction. I'm getting reports of violent outbreaks in Birmingham, Manchester, Cardiff, and Edinburgh, every major transport hub connected to London. The pattern follows transportation networks exactly as you'd expect. Every single train, bus, or plane that left London in those first critical 72 hours became a potential hot zone for transmission. The government's containment story is falling apart by the hour. I'm hearing from contacts and emergency services across the country who describe identical patterns, sudden eruptions of extreme violence in train stations, bus terminals, and airports. One infected person arrives, and within minutes you have dozens more. The infection chain multiplies too rapidly to control or even track. This virus moves through crowds with frightening efficiency. Security footage leaked from Manchester Piccadilly Station shows a single infected individual entering the main concourse. 6 minutes later, over 30 people were actively turning. The speed defies everything we know about conventional disease transmission. It's like watching a wildfire spread through dry brush. That military cordon around London. It's like locking the barn after the horses are halfway to the next county. It might slightly slow the spread, but my analysis shows self-sustaining infection clusters already established throughout Britain. What terrifies me most is how the pathogen is evolving. I've compared clinical data from early Cambridge cases with recent London cases. There's clear evidence of mutation, faster symptom onset, and enhanced transmission. This thing is adapting to human hosts at a rate we've never seen before.
Let's get specific about what happens to someone when they get infected. My listeners need to know what to watch for.
The infection progression follows a terrifyingly predictable pattern. There are no gradual symptoms. Infection takes hold almost immediately after exposure. Within seconds, victims experience extreme adrenaline surges, convulsions, and violent muscle contractions. Any trace of rational thought disappears almost at once. Initial exposure triggers an uncontrollable rage response. Veins darken, eyes flood with blood, and breathing becomes erratic and shallow. Victims scream, vomit blood, and lunge at the nearest person, driven entirely by aggression. Within less than a minute, full transformation occurs. All higher cognitive function collapses, leaving only primitive survival and attack instincts. They exhibit immense strength, no fear, and complete disregard for injury or exhaustion. The person you knew is gone almost instantly, replaced by something consumed by fury.
How the hell is this possible? Something this dangerous doesn't just appear and spread like wildfire overnight.
Whether this release was accidental or intentional doesn't matter anymore. What matters is facing the truth about what we're dealing with. Based on current spread patterns and absent any effective treatment, my models project complete societal breakdown across Britain within 10 to 14 days, followed by similar collapse in continental Europe unless we implement unprecedented measures immediately.
You've been tracking the military response? Are they even being honest about what they're doing inside the containment zone?
Absolutely not. My contacts in various intelligence agencies confirm the situation inside the containment zone is catastrophic. What the military calls extraction operations are actually limited, scorched earth campaigns. They're not saving everyone, they're identifying high-value individuals and abandoning everyone else. The burning you see inside London, those aren't just fires from civil unrest. They're using incendiary weapons to sterilize heavily infected areas. Entire neighborhoods are being systematically destroyed to create fire breaks against infection spread. The scale of civilian casualties is being deliberately concealed. Military units are operating under classified protocols that supersede normal rules of engagement. Soldiers have been authorized to use lethal force against anyone showing even early-stage symptoms. They're not trying to save the infected. They're treating them as walking biohazards to be eliminated.
What kind of measures could possibly work against something like this? Is there anything that would actually help?
Traditional containment is already a lost cause. The only remotely effective approach would be absolute regional isolation. Zero movement between affected and unaffected areas, enforced by any means necessary, with aggressive prophylactic treatments, if we can develop them in time. But frankly, I've shifted my focus to survival strategies rather than containment. People need to understand that government infrastructure and emergency services are already buckling and will soon collapse entirely. Self-sufficiency and isolation from population centers offer the only realistic chance of surviving until this burns out or we find a treatment. There might be one weakness. The pathogen appears to need active hosts. If it truly requires direct transmission and can't persist long in the environment, isolated communities might remain infection-free with strict quarantine protocols. But that's a massive if, based on limited data.
You're basically describing the end of organized society in Britain. Are you saying we're completely screwed?
I'm saying hope needs to be built on hard facts, not comforting lies. The containment narrative is pure fantasy now. What we're seeing is just the beginning of what will become a catastrophic pandemic, unless something fundamentally changes in our understanding of this pathogen. To anyone listening, avoid official evacuation channels, stay away from population centers, secure your isolation location with whatever resources you can gather, and be extremely careful about who you let into your safe zone.
Let's talk survival tactics. For listeners who are in unaffected areas but worried about spread, what specific steps should they take right now?
First, stockpile essentials immediately. Water, non-perishable food, medications, first aid supplies. Assume you'll need to be self-sufficient for at least 30 days with no outside contact. Include water purification methods and backup power sources if possible. Second, create a secure location with multiple defensive layers. The infected are primarily attracted to sound, light, and movement. Your safe zone should be soundproofed as much as possible, with blackout capabilities and reinforced entry points. Upper floors provide better security as the infected struggle with complex vertical navigation. Third, maintain communications equipment that doesn't rely on infrastructure, battery-powered radios, satellite phones if available. Information will become your most valuable resource as official channels collapse. But be selective about what you believe. Government sources are already compromised by political agendas. Finally, develop a mobility plan. If your location becomes compromised, you need predetermined alternate sites and routes that avoid population centers. Travel only during daylight hours. The infected appear more active after dark. Move quietly. Avoid using vehicles when possible, and maintain constant awareness of your surroundings.
Thank you for that brutally honest assessment, Christian. We'll keep broadcasting as long as we can maintain secure connections. This is Jimmy Crystal for the Truth Underground. Stay safe, stay alert, and God help us all.
This is the emergency alert system. This message is transmitted at the request of the Prime Minister's Office and the United Kingdom Ministry of Defence. This is not a test. A national emergency has been declared throughout the United Kingdom. The emergency broadcast system has been activated and will remain the primary channel for official communications until further notice. The infection zone now encompasses all of Greater London and portions of surrounding counties. All citizens within this zone who have not been infected are directed to follow these instructions carefully. Barricade all entrances to your home or current location. Use furniture, appliances, or any available materials to reinforce doors and ground floor windows. Infected individuals may attempt to enter by force. Remain as quiet as possible. Infected individuals are attracted to sound. Keep voices low. Silence all electronic devices and avoid any activities that generate noise. If you observe symptoms in yourself or others, including elevated aggression, bloodshot eyes, fever, or disorientation, isolate the affected individual immediately in a secure room. Do not attempt to reason with or restrain infected persons without proper protection. Evacuation operations continue at designated extraction points. Military personnel are conducting systematic searches through residential areas. If you hear authorized evacuation teams, identify yourself clearly but cautiously. Monitoring of this broadcast is mandatory for all citizens. Updates will be provided hourly with revised instructions and evacuation schedules. This concludes this emergency alert system notification. This message will repeat in 15 minutes.
BBC Radio 4 emergency broadcast. Jim Mitchell reporting from a contingency studio at an undisclosed location. The situation across London and surrounding counties has completely fallen apart in the last 24 hours, with evacuation efforts collapsing on multiple fronts. We've just received word of a horrific incident at King's Cross Station, where a government evacuation train was overrun after what they're calling a security breach. All rail evacuations have been suspended, stranding thousands at stations across the capital. Military units have moved in to secure these locations, but we're getting only fragments of information from inside the cordons. The emergency corridor along the M4 motorway has also been lost after the infected were discovered at the Heston Services checkpoint. With the western exit now cut off, the northern A1 corridor is the only official evacuation route left, but reports indicate bumper-to-bumper traffic has made it impassable beyond Brent Cross. This represents the effective collapse of the government's planned evacuation strategy. Multiple military and emergency service channels are reporting what they're calling a catastrophic breach of inner London containment zones. The situation at Heathrow Terminal 5, which was serving as both an evacuation centre and military command post, is particularly dire. Satellite imagery shows large fires throughout the complex, with military helicopters conducting what appears to be an emergency extraction of personnel. No official statement has been issued regarding the status of civilians who were sheltering there. We've managed to reach Selina Bell, who was at King's Cross when chaos erupted. Selina, what happened in there?
Jim, I'm huddled inside the main concourse at King's Cross. It's a war zone here. Complete bloody chaos. Thousands were packed in waiting for the 10 a.m. evacuation train to Edinburgh when everything went to hell. I was watching from the upper mezzanine as they screened people at the platform entrance. Soldiers were taking temperatures and doing blood tests on everyone. Around 9:45, there was a sudden commotion at one of the checkpoints. Several people just charged through the security line and onto the platform. The military response was immediate but useless. As they chased the people who breached security, fights broke out everywhere across the concourse. It became clear that some of these people were infected. Everyone panicked, running in all directions, completely overwhelming what security remained. The military has barricaded parts of the station, but they've lost control of most of the concourse. I've seen people tearing into each other like animals. The soldiers are firing into crowds whenever they spot someone infected, but in this madness, they can't tell who's infected and who's just terrified. The screening process was completely useless. They were using temperature checks and rapid blood tests, but the virus doesn't work like that. There's no detection window. One moment someone's fine, the next they're fully infected. We watched it happen right on the platform. A man got into a scuffle with security, just a minor altercation. Blood from someone already infected must have gotten on him, because within seconds his eyes went bloodshot red. He started convulsing violently, then just launched himself at everyone nearby. Pure rage, instant transformation. The train was about to depart when more infections erupted inside the carriages. One person turns, attacks others. Their blood spreads, and suddenly you've got dozens turning within moments. What happened next was, I've covered war zones in Syria and Ukraine, and I've never seen anything like this. The infected move with this terrible purpose. They attack in large groups, trying to infect everyone in their path. Those of us who made it to higher floors or secured areas are trapped here. They've told us to stay put until extraction teams arrive, but I overheard military radio chatter suggesting those teams won't reach us for hours, maybe days, given how many crisis points have erupted across London. This survivor was one of the station staff helping with evacuation. Tell them about the train, about what happened when it started moving.
I saw everything. They missed something. Nobody knows how it started. This businessman in a suit, he passed all their tests, seemed perfectly fine 1 minute, then suddenly there were these crows. They'd been circling the station all morning, flying in and out through the broken skylights. Some of them landed near the platform, covered in blood. I don't know if that's what did it, or if he was already infected, but suddenly he just snapped, lunged at this woman beside him, knocked her down and vomited all over her. Then she changed too, started convulsing, her eyes went red, the soldiers started shooting, but it was already too late. They were everywhere, too many of them. God, there were too many. The Edinburgh train. They managed to close the doors and start pulling away, even though some infected had gotten aboard. But about 100 metres down the track, the train just stopped. We could hear screaming from inside, even from the concourse. Then we saw them breaking the windows, climbing out. The whole train was compromised within minutes. People who'd passed every test were turning right before our eyes.
I have to move, Jim. They're trying to break through the barricade to our position. I'll try to call in again if I can. To anyone listening who's thinking about evacuation, stay away from official routes. I repeat, do not approach train stations, transport hubs, or evacuation centres. They're death traps.
Selina, do you copy? We've lost contact with our reporter at King's Cross. We'll try to reconnect when possible. We're receiving similar reports from multiple evacuation points across London: Waterloo Station, Liverpool Street, Victoria Coach Station, all reporting security breaches and widespread infection. The pattern appears to be consistent: screening failures followed by rapid spread through densely packed evacuation centres. Sources inside the military suggest a fundamental failure in understanding how the pathogen behaves. The standard quarantine assumption that the infected can be visually identified is proving catastrophically wrong. Medical screening equipment designed for traditional biohazards is proving ineffective against this pathogen's unique characteristics. Joining us now is Dr. Frank Gleeson from the UK Health Security Agency, who's been leading the medical response. Dr. Gleeson, with evacuation routes collapsing, what advice can you give to those still trapped in infected areas?
Jim, we've moved beyond our containment strategies. The situation has forced us to shift to survival guidance for anyone who can't evacuate. For those still in London or other compromised areas, you must secure your location immediately. Use furniture, appliances, anything you can find to block doors and windows. Multiple layers work better than single barriers. Get to upper floors if possible. The infected struggle with stairs and complex vertical movement. The infection takes hold shockingly fast, typically less than a minute from exposure to full symptoms. I can't stress this enough. Once symptoms fully manifest, that person will turn violently against everyone nearby. The infected are drawn to sound, so stay as quiet as possible. They can't plan or use tools effectively, but they're unnaturally strong and don't respond to pain. Normal barriers that would stop a person won't necessarily hold them back. If you must move, do it during daylight. The infected seem to see poorly in bright light. Travel in small groups. Stay silent and avoid main roads and evacuation routes. They're likely compromised. We're establishing military safe zones marked by orange beacons you can spot from a distance. Above all, conserve water and food. Infrastructure is failing across affected regions. If tap water stops, purification becomes your top priority. You need at least 4 litres of clean water per person daily.
Dr. Gleeson, you're giving post-apocalyptic survival tips rather than medical advice. Isn't this admitting containment has completely failed?
I'd call it adapting to reality, Jim. Our models couldn't anticipate how quickly this pathogen would mutate or how dramatically it would alter behavior. Traditional epidemic response assumes rational behavior from the uninfected population. What we're seeing is the collapse of that rationality under unbearable pressure. The standard epidemic playbook assumes infected people will seek treatment, self-isolate, and generally comply with public health guidance. This pathogen creates the opposite effect. The infected actively seek out uninfected populations, deliberately spread the infection, and target precisely the systems designed to contain them. Moreover, the terror created by the outbreak is causing uninfected people to make fatal mistakes. Panicked evacuation attempts create perfect conditions for viral spread. People abandoning secured locations out of fear often encounter infected in transit. The very human instinct to help infected family members or friends leads to new infections. The infection continues to spread despite everything we've tried. That's just fact. But that doesn't mean survival is impossible. Small, isolated communities with resources and strict protocols can remain infection-free. Military facilities are still operational. Research teams are working on treatments in secure locations outside the hot zones. What failed wasn't our entire response, but our initial assumption that we could handle this like previous outbreaks. This pathogen is something entirely new, a threat not just to physical health, but to society itself. We have to adapt, focusing on islands of security while acknowledging that the broader social structure is crumbling around us.
You mentioned research teams working on treatments. Is there any progress on that front? Any hope for a vaccine or cure?
I need to be honest about our prospects, Jim. This isn't like developing a vaccine for influenza or even COVID. The pathogen's primary impact is neurological rather than immunological, making traditional vaccine approaches largely ineffective. We've also identified certain genetic markers that appear to correlate with resistance to infection. A small percentage of the population, less than 1%, seems naturally less susceptible to the pathogen. Understanding this resistance mechanism could potentially lead to treatment options, but that research is in very early stages. I want to emphasize that no approved treatments exist yet. Anyone claiming to have a cure is selling false hope. Our best strategy remains prevention of exposure through isolation and strict biosecurity measures.
Global markets are in free fall, with trading halted in London, Frankfurt and Tokyo. Panic buying has emptied shelves across unaffected parts of the UK. The government has just announced immediate rationing of fuel, food and medical supplies. The Bank of England has implemented emergency measures to prevent complete financial collapse. All consumer debt payments have been temporarily suspended and withdrawal limits imposed at banks still operating outside the containment zone. The pound has fallen to historic lows against major currencies as international confidence in UK stability plummets. Reports from northern England indicate massive population movements away from major cities. Highways are jammed with vehicles heading toward remote areas in Scotland, Wales and the Lake District. Rural communities are already reporting resource shortages and conflicts with arriving evacuees. Some have established armed checkpoints to prevent outsiders from entering. Internationally, European nations have slammed their borders shut against the UK. France is forcing all British nationals into quarantine facilities regardless of symptoms. The US has banned all travel and suspended flights from any European destination with potential exposure. Naval vessels from multiple nations have established what French authorities are calling a maritime quarantine perimeter around the British Isles. All civilian vessels attempting to leave British waters are being intercepted and turned back. Military aircraft enforce a no-fly zone extending 100 miles from all UK coastlines. The United Nations Security Council is in emergency session, with proposals ranging from international humanitarian intervention to complete isolation of Britain until the infection burns itself out. The World Health Organization has classified the outbreak as a pathogenic threat level Omega, the highest designation in their emergency response system. For those in unaffected areas, regional emergency hotlines are now active. We've just received word that the government will be broadcasting a message from a secure location at 1800 hours. Early reports suggest this will include significant changes to the national response strategy and new emergency powers implementation. We'll carry that broadcast live when it occurs. We'll broadcast information about safe zones, military facilities and any remaining evacuation routes at the top of every hour. Keep battery-powered radios on hand as power outages spread across the country. This is Jim Mitchell for BBC Radio 4 Emergency Broadcast Service. Stay with us for further updates.
This is Ian Kelson broadcasting from, can't tell you where exactly. Always on the move now, haven't transmitted in almost 3 days. They found my studio, cut the power, seized my equipment, had to abandon everything. Running this on a jury-rigged mobile setup until the batteries die or they triangulate my signal. They all called me crazy. Who's the crazy one now? I've warned you for months, and every single prediction is coming true. Our own government engineered this for population control, and it's escaped. Or hell, maybe they released it deliberately. Maybe this catastrophe was the end game all along. I'm heading north, racing to reach these so-called safe zones before they lock down all borders. But let me tell you what I've witnessed on the road. Soldiers executing civilians in cold blood. Not just infected people, anyone who questions their authority. Saw it myself at a checkpoint outside Oxford. Family with 2 kids refused to be separated for individual screening, and the military opened fire without a single warning. No hesitation, no mercy, just slaughtered them right there on the roadside. This quarantine isn't about keeping infection contained, it's about preventing witnesses from escaping. They're desperate to hide what's really happening. This outbreak isn't some accident, it's deliberate mass murder. Perfect excuse to impose martial law, seize private resources, eliminate political opposition. Think logically, who decides who's infected and who's clean? The very same people who created this nightmare. I've got my hands on classified documents from a Defense Ministry insider, top secret protocols drafted months before the Cambridge incident. They knew this was coming. Operation Silent Night, that's the actual code name. Detailed plans for population reduction and resource consolidation during widespread social disruption. This wasn't emergency planning, this was their step-by-step playbook for everything happening right now. And these safe zones they're herding people toward. Nothing but concentration camps with medical window dressing. My source confirms they're sorting people by skills, usefulness, genetic profiles. If you're not deemed essential for their post-collapse world, you're disposable. The infection is merely their excuse. We're witnessing the controlled demolition of society, clearing ground for whatever dystopia they plan to build on our ashes. If you're still in any city or town, get out now. Don't wait for official evacuation. Those are slaughterhouses. Trust no one showing even slightly unusual behavior. The early symptoms are becoming more subtle as the virus adapts. Someone can appear perfectly normal 1 second and rip your throat out the next. I'll try to establish a secure broadcast location once I'm clear of populated areas. If you're receiving this transmission, spread it through any remaining channels. The government has functionally collapsed. Military units are splintering, some going rogue, others clinging to whatever's left of command structure. The elites are fighting among themselves over what to do next. This might be my final broadcast for a while. Battery's almost dead, and I need to save fuel. Remember everything I've told you. Trust your gut instincts, not their official bullshit. The truth is more horrifying than their lies, but at least the truth gives you a fighting chance to survive. Wait, what the hell is that up ahead? There's a roadblock that isn't on any of my maps. Those aren't military vehicles. Oh Christ, they're infected. They've spotted me. They're coming this way. Fast. Too many of them. I need to...
This is the emergency alert system. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United Kingdom Joint Military Command. This is not a test. Shoot-on-sight protocols are now in effect for all infected individuals encountered in non-secured zones. Military and authorized civilian defense units have been instructed to use lethal force without prior warning when encountering persons displaying symptoms of infection. All civilians in affected regions are directed to remain quiet and hidden. The infected are attracted to sound. Noise discipline is essential for survival. Maintain communication only through text or written means when possible. New intelligence confirms the infection is spreading faster than containment efforts. Previously designated safe zones in the following areas have been compromised and should be avoided immediately. Reading Oxford, Luton, Watford, Chelmsford, and Maidstone. All remaining uninfected civilians should attempt to reach military secure points at the following locations: Cambridge Science Park, RAF Northolt, Sandhurst Military Academy, and HMS Naval Base Portsmouth. Approach these locations with extreme caution, displaying clearly visible white flags or clothing. Anyone encountering military personnel must comply instantly with all commands. Hesitation may be interpreted as a sign of infection and result in immediate neutralization. This message will repeat hourly on all available frequencies. This concludes this emergency alert system notification.
This is BBC Radio 4 emergency broadcast. Jim Mitchell here. We're dealing with power failures at our backup facility. If you can hear my voice, please stay tuned for vital information. Power grids across southern England collapsed overnight after attacks on key infrastructure. Only emergency generators and battery-powered equipment still function in most areas. Military sources report large numbers of the infected have overrun power stations and communication towers, rushing toward noise and movement. For those just tuning in, we've been forced to relocate 3 times in the past week as infection zones expanded. This broadcast now originates from a secured military communications bunker at an undisclosed location. Our transmission range is limited to what remaining relay stations can boost through emergency power systems. If you're hearing my voice, consider yourself fortunate. Most of the country has gone dark. I need to be brutally honest with our listeners. The situation is far worse than they've been telling you. Official casualty numbers have been massively downplayed due to communication failures and the virus's rapid spread. Latest intelligence suggests around 60% of Greater London's population is now infected, dead or missing. Birmingham and Manchester show similar patterns of collapse. The infection has spread faster than any modelling predicted. What started as isolated outbreaks has merged into what military analysts are now calling saturated infection zones, areas where the enraged population outnumbers the uninfected by overwhelming margins. These zones now cover most of southern England and extend deep into the Midlands. Cities have become death traps where survival grows increasingly impossible by the hour. We're experiencing transmission difficulties. If you're hearing this broadcast break up, please adjust your receiver or relocate to higher ground for better signal reception. We'll continue broadcasting on all available frequencies for as long as our equipment functions. We've managed to reach Selina Bell, who's found a broadcast position in East London. Selina, are you there?
Jim, I'm on a rooftop near Canary Wharf. What I'm seeing is, I don't have words. The financial district is an inferno. Multiple skyscrapers have collapsed after burning unchecked for days. Smoke has cut visibility to less than 100 metres. From up here, I can see crowds of them surging through streets and buildings below. They charge after any sign of life, moving in the same direction as if driven by instinct. There's no military presence left in central London. Haven't seen a single official for over 36 hours. We thought we were witnessing civil collapse, but this is something else entirely. It's like watching predators follow blood in the water. They roam and fight among themselves, but all frenzy towards survivors when spotted. The Thames barrier has failed, flooding riverside areas. No idea if it was sabotage or just lack of maintenance. People tried escaping by boat, but the infected swarmed them. I watched one evacuation vessel get overwhelmed through binoculars just 2 hours ago. The speed they attacked with was, Christ, I can't describe it. Where there are narrow passages, they pile in after fleeing crowds. They scream to draw others when prey is found. I don't know how they react so quickly, but it's not planning. It's pure animal response. Nothing about this suggests understanding, only rage. The only survivors I can spot are holed up in defensible high-rises, signalling each other with flags and mirrors from rooftops. They're running dangerously low on supplies. Military tried helicopter extractions yesterday, but stopped after too many swarms rushed landing zones during pickup. I need to move before sunset. They get much more active after dark. If anyone with extraction capability is hearing this, there are 30 survivors in this building who need immediate evacuation. We've marked our location with red fabric on the northwest corner of the roof. Please, we're desperate for any help.
Selena, damn it, we've lost her again. We'll try to re-establish contact if the signal returns. The patterns Selena described, rapid convergence during attacks, matches reports we're receiving from across the affected regions. Reports from Cambridge, where scientists continue working despite catastrophic conditions, suggest the virus sharply focuses primal brain function, creating extreme sensitivity to sound, movement and fear responses. Joining us is Commander Henry West, who's been directing military operations across the southeast. Commander, what's the real status of containment efforts?
I won't sugarcoat this, Mitchell. We've lost control. The perimeter's gone. We don't have the manpower anymore. We don't have the resources. We're pulling back to whatever defensible positions we can hold north of the 7 wash line. This thing, it's moving faster than we can respond. Conventional tactics aren't working against it. Christ, we've lost nearly 60% of our people inside the original containment zone. Some got infected, others died fighting. The units we have left, we're positioning around power stations, water treatment facilities, whatever evacuation routes are still viable. That's all we can do now. If there's anyone listening who's still south of the line, get north. Do it now. Don't wait. We've set up fortified zones along the major northern routes. They've got defenses, screening capabilities. But I need to be honest, space is tight. We're having to make hard choices about who gets in. People with medical skills, engineering knowledge, they're the priority now.
Look, 3 days ago, I received orders directly from the top. We're done trying to take back what we've lost. That's not the mission anymore. Now it's just about saving who we can, protecting what infrastructure remains. This isn't some tactical retreat. We're acknowledging reality here. Southern England is gone.
The infected are evolving. At first, they were just aggressive, disorganized. Now they're different. They react faster, almost like they're learning. Makes it damn near impossible to counter them effectively. I've given the order at all checkpoints. Anyone showing symptoms gets shot on sight. No exceptions, no delays. The virus works too fast now for quarantine protocols. It's harsh, I know that, but it's the only way to protect whoever's left.
Commander, we're hearing reports that some military units have abandoned their posts or disobeyed orders. Is the command structure falling apart?
We've had units break ranks, yeah. Mostly where troops got cut off from command or saw things nobody should have to see. Mass casualties, entire squads gone in minutes. It's not a full collapse of the chain of command, but can you blame them, given what they're up against? Look, I need to be straight with you about what's happening out there. Nothing in basic training, nothing in combat experience, nothing prepares you for this kind of enemy. These soldiers are watching their buddies, people they've served with for years, transform into something inhuman right in front of them. They're having to put down infected civilians. God, some of them children. That does something to a person. It breaks something fundamental. We're losing as many to psychological collapse as to the infection itself.
Some of these units that command has labeled rogue. They're actually following the protocols we put in place for communications blackouts. They're doing exactly what they were trained to do when cut off. Continue the last mission parameters independently. Others have made judgment calls to protect civilians instead of holding strategic positions. Hard to fault them for that choice. I might have done the same.
We haven't lost everything. We still control the critical infrastructure, power stations, water facilities, key military installations, and most units, even the ones operating autonomously, are still following their core directives, protecting survivors, fighting the infected where they can. We're doing everything possible to re-establish contact with isolated groups. I want to make one thing absolutely clear. If you're uninfected and hearing this, your best chance is still with us, the military. We've managed to secure several locations that remain infection-free, places with supplies, defenses, some semblance of normal life. We're holding these safe zones while the research teams, while they try to find something, anything to fight this thing. That's all I can offer right now. It's not much, but it's something.
We're experiencing more power issues here. Let me quickly summarise the critical information for anyone catching this broadcast intermittently. Southern England is lost. Military forces are pulling back to northern defensive positions. Evacuation routes north remain open, but increasingly dangerous, with checkpoints on major northbound roads. Anyone showing any signs of infection will be shot on sight at these checkpoints. No exceptions. The virus continues to evolve, with rage-driven behaviour intensifying. They're most active after dark, drawn quickly to sound and movement. Avoid any noise or light that might attract a horde. Scientific research continues in secured facilities, but no effective treatment or vaccine exists. The best hope for survival remains isolation from potential infection sources, movement to northern safe zones if possible, or secure shelter in defensible locations with adequate supplies if evacuation isn't an option. Power and communications are failing everywhere in affected regions. Battery-powered radios are now your most reliable way to receive emergency information. Conserve batteries by only listening at the top of each hour when we'll broadcast critical updates. If you're trapped in a compromised area and can't evacuate, secure your location, stay absolutely silent, and don't move after dark. The infected are more active and at night. Get to high floors whenever possible. It's your best chance to avoid detection. We've just received word that our main transmission relay has been compromised. We'll be moving to backup systems, but broadcast range will be severely limited. If this is the last transmission you receive from us, know that operations continue from secure locations in Scotland. Continue monitoring emergency frequencies for updates as available. This is Jim Mitchell, broadcasting on Emergency Power. We'll keep transmitting as long as we can. God help us all.
We huddle here in darkness, my friends, while the world outside crumbles. These few candles must remain dim, for even the faintest light might draw their attention to our sanctuary. Our voices dare not rise above a whisper, our prayers confined to the silence of our hearts. For those consumed by rage, hunt for any sound of life. I've barricaded these ancient church doors with everything we could find, but I harbor no illusions. Wood and stone cannot hold back what stalks the streets forever. We're facing a darkness unlike anything we've ever known. Yet even now, I find comfort in the words of the psalm. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. When this plague first appeared, I stood at this pulpit and pronounced it God's judgment. I claim to understand his purpose in this suffering. What terrible pride, what blindness. I was wrong, not about God's presence, he is here with us, but about my presumption that I knew his mind. Sometimes suffering isn't punishment. Sometimes it's simply the broken reality of our world. Look at what we've become in these dark days. Here in this sanctuary, we've shared our food, tended each other's wounds, comforted each other's fears. In the midst of horror, we found our humanity. That's not just survival. That's grace at work. That's love made visible when we need it most. They're testing the doors again. I must speak plainly now in what may be our final moments together. I don't know if we'll survive until morning. These walls may not hold, but I do know this. Our bodies may perish, but our souls need not be lost in this darkness. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Even now, Especially now, his offer of salvation stands. In him, there is a light that no darkness can extinguish, not even the darkness that surrounds us tonight. If you've never placed your trust in Christ, I urge you to do so now. There are no complex rituals required, no grand ceremonies needed, just a heart that turns to him in faith. He who calmed the storm, who conquered death itself, offers us peace even in this moment. Not necessarily safety for our bodies, but eternal refuge for our souls. We must extinguish most of these candles now to preserve what little light remains. One will continue burning on the altar as our vigil light, a reminder that even the smallest flame pushes back darkness, a symbol that hope persists. Whatever comes through that door, remember that you are loved by God. He sent his son not to condemn us, but to save us. In him, there is peace that surpasses understanding, hope that transcends circumstances, and life that overcomes even death. Turn to him now in the quiet of your hearts and find the salvation that cannot be taken away. May God's peace be with you all, even now, even here. Amen.
This is the emergency alert system. The following message is transmitted by surviving elements of the United Kingdom Joint Military Command. This is not a test. Communication infrastructure is failing nationwide. This may be the final broadcast on this frequency. All surviving civilians should record these instructions. Move only during daylight hours. The infected are most active between sunset and sunrise. During daylight, their visual acuity and coordination appear reduced. Coastal evacuation points have been established at the following locations: Aberdeen, Inverness, Newcastle, Hull, and Liverpool. International naval vessels are conducting extraction operations when possible. Priority is given to uninfected individuals with critical skills. Do not approach any individual displaying unusual behavior, regardless of their claims or appearance. Maintain complete silence when in potentially compromised areas. Recent observations confirm that infected individuals primarily locate prey through auditory stimuli. Visual camouflage is ineffective. Military forces have established a final defensive perimeter along the Scottish border. All civilians north of this line must submit to mandatory screening. Resistance to screening procedures will result in immediate neutralization, severe signal degradation. This message will repeat if transmission capabilities remain. May God protect the survivors of the United Kingdom. This concludes this emergency alert system notification.
Emergency broadcast on remaining active frequencies. Jim Mitchell transmitting from a military bunker somewhere in northern England. Regular broadcast networks are down across most of the country. Defence Ministry has confirmed devastating losses. Multiple regiments wiped out during operations near Birmingham over the past 2 days. The attempt to create a fallback containment line along the M6 motorway has completely failed, with infected hordes overwhelming our positions and pushing northward. All remaining military units are now in full retreat toward fortified positions in the Scottish Highlands. If anyone from my family is hearing this, I pray you made it to Newcastle for evacuation. I've had no word from the coastal teams. If you're safe, if you're still uninfected, just know I'm thinking of you constantly. We've been trying to reach our correspondent Selina Bell for the past 36 hours without success. Her last transmission came from a rooftop in Canary Wharf, where she reported massive fires and collapsed buildings throughout London's financial district. We've received no further contact and must presume she has been lost in the chaos engulfing the capital. I've just received reports from military sources about the situation in Manchester, where the northern safe zone has fallen. According to officers involved in the evacuation, a massive convoy is currently retreating northward along the M61 motorway, approximately 20 miles from the city. The convoy includes both military vehicles and civilian transports carrying evacuees from the Manchester safe zone, which was overrun yesterday evening. The situation is being described as a desperate fighting retreat. Thousands of infected are reportedly pursuing the convoy, with rearguard units firing continuously to hold them back. Ammunition supplies are said to be critically low, and the entire operation is being conducted under blackout conditions to avoid drawing more infected to their position. Perhaps most disturbing are reports about civilians still trapped in the area. Military protocol now apparently forbids stopping for civilian pickup due to the risk of screening failures and resource limitations. Multiple sources confirm that the convoy is driving past stranded groups of survivors, effectively leaving them behind as the infected advance. Details emerging about Manchester's fall paint a grim picture. Defence perimeters were breached simultaneously at multiple points as the infected displayed what one officer described as evolving attack patterns, concentrating on weak points in defences and swarming through any breach in overwhelming numbers. The convoy is attempting to reach the Scottish border by dawn, where the final defensive perimeter is being established in the Highlands. However, fuel shortages and vehicle breakdowns are threatening this timeline, raising serious concerns about whether the entire convoy will reach safety before being overwhelmed. With us now is Commander Henry West. Commander, give us the unvarnished truth about our military situation.
Everything's falling apart. Fast. As of early this morning, 2 a.m., we had to admit the obvious. There's no civilian government left. Not in England, not in Wales. Military command is still functioning, but we're hanging by a thread. Communications are down to hardened bunkers, and whatever mobile units still have power. We've narrowed our focus to 3 things. Getting essential personnel out, setting up what we're calling the final defensive perimeter, and keeping the research teams working. I won't lie to you, we're not winning this war. We can't. At this point, it's just about keeping some of us alive. Survival, not victory. Most of England, it's just gone. That's the reality we're dealing with now. The cities are death traps. Anyone going in on rescue operations doesn't come back out. Our satellite feeds show these, I don't even know what to call them, hordes, massive groups of infected, thousands of them, flowing along highways, railway lines, anywhere people used to travel. We're falling back to locations in Scotland we've identified as defensible. Places with their own food supply, power generation, natural barriers like rivers or mountains. If, and it's a big if, we ever find a way to fight this thing, these strongholds will be where we start rebuilding.
I've heard the talk about desertion, about troops going rogue.
Yes, we've lost some units in extreme situations. Who wouldn't break under this pressure? But most of our people, they're still fighting, still trying. When we pull out of somewhere, it's not because we want to, it's because we have to. Because staying means losing everyone.
If you're military and you're hearing this, if you're cut off from your command, try to reach the nearest rally point if you can do it safely. If you can't, if it's too dangerous to move, then secure wherever you are. Protect any civilians you've got with you. Hold position. We'll try to re-establish contact when we can. If we can.
Thank you, Commander. International sources report that a multinational naval force has formed what they're calling a quarantine flotilla around the British Isles. Any unauthorised vessels trying to leave British waters are being intercepted and forced back. Aircraft violating the no-fly zone are being shot down without warning. The World Health Organization has classified the British outbreak as pathogenic threat level Omega, their highest possible designation. For anyone with working communication equipment, emergency channels are active on these frequencies: 7.545 MHz for military communications, 5.370 MHz for civilian emergency coordination, and 3.98 MHz for medical assistance. These channels are monitored when personnel and equipment allow. This is Jim Mitchell continuing emergency broadcasts while our facilities remain operational. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and God help us all. The following is an emergency broadcast from the acting government of the United Kingdom.
My fellow survivors, for I can no longer call us merely citizens. The United Kingdom as we knew it has ceased to exist. The infection has overwhelmed our containment efforts. What remains of government continues to function from secure facilities. But I must speak plainly. London has fallen. Birmingham has fallen. Manchester is under siege. Our nation now fights hour by hour for its very survival. I address you not from Downing Street, but from a hardened military bunker in the north. My administration has been decimated, reduced to essential personnel only. Many of your elected representatives have perished in the chaos engulfing our cities. Their sacrifice will be honored when, if this darkest chapter of our history is ever written. As of 600 hours this morning, I authorized implementation of the final defense protocol. This represents our last desperate measure in the face of overwhelming catastrophe. In blunt terms, we are abandoning all territory south of the Edinburgh-Glasgow line. All remaining military assets and government functions are being consolidated within what we now designate the Northern Safe Zone. I refuse to shield you from the brutal truth of our situation. Casualties are beyond catastrophic. Early estimates indicate over 40% of our population is already lost, either directly infected or killed in the resulting chaos. All critical infrastructure has collapsed across England and Wales. Our armed forces have suffered staggering losses attempting to evacuate civilians and contain the infected hordes. This pathogen defies every conventional response measure. It spreads with nightmarish efficiency, incubates in hours rather than days, and triggers neurological changes that transform the infected into implacable predators, hunting the uninfected. International assistance has been severely limited by the global quarantine surrounding our islands. I harbour no resentment toward our allies for this decision. Their primary duty, as was once ours, is protecting their own citizens. Limited extractions continue for individuals with critical expertise, but the harsh reality is that large-scale evacuation is no longer possible. For those within the Northern Safe Zone, martial law will remain in effect indefinitely. All civilians must obey military directives instantly, without question. Mandatory screening continues around the clock, and the grim necessity of immediate execution for anyone showing infection symptoms will be enforced without exception. These measures may seem brutal, but they represent our only remaining chance for human survival on these islands. For those trapped in compromised areas, still trying to reach safety, military extraction teams operate from forward bases where possible. These locations are marked with ultraviolet beacons, visible only through specialized equipment to prevent detection by infected groups. Approach with extreme caution, prepared for intensive screening. I must be brutally clear, our resources are critically limited, and not everyone seeking evacuation can be accommodated. Before I conclude, I must acknowledge the extraordinary courage shown by ordinary Britons throughout this nightmare. From healthcare workers who stayed at their posts even as infection swept through their hospitals, to neighbors who defended one another when official protection collapsed, to countless unnamed heroes who sacrificed themselves so others might escape, you embody the indomitable spirit that has defined our nation throughout its long history. I cannot promise victory against this enemy. I cannot promise our nation will survive in any recognizable form, but I swear to you that as long as uninfected Britons draw breath, the fight continues. The flame of civilization may flicker on this island, but we will not let it be extinguished while we have strength to defend it. May God protect what remains of the United Kingdom and its people. This is Prime Minister Wesker, signing off.
You have just heard an emergency broadcast from the acting government of the United Kingdom. Further communications will follow if transmission capabilities persist.
This is the emergency alert system, Kingdom Joint Military Command. This is not a test. Confirmation of the fall of Birmingham and Manchester. All civilian evacuation operations from these locations have been terminated. Remaining military units have been withdrawn to support the final defensive perimeter. The infection has spread beyond all projected containment scenarios. Satellite monitoring confirms massive population movement throughout England, Wales, and southern Scotland. These movements correspond to infected group migrations rather than organized human activity. Establishment of final defensive perimeter in Scottish Highlands is now complete. All uninfected civilians north of the Forth Clyde line must report to military checkpoints for screening and processing. Compliance is mandatory. Resistance will result in immediate neutralization. For any survivors in compromised territories, avoid all population centers. Remain mobile. Travel only during daylight hours. Utilize elevated positions when stationary. Maintain absolute silence in potentially hostile areas. Trust no one showing any symptoms. Early warning signs include irritability, elevated body temperature, visible eye discoloration, and unusual speech patterns. Isolation protocols must be implemented at first suspicion of infection. May God protect the survivors of the United Kingdom.
This is an emergency broadcast on remaining frequencies. Jim Mitchell here, broadcasting alone from a hidden bunker in northern England. Power's failing everywhere. We're running on backup generators with barely any fuel left. We've just confirmed the acting government has fled to some secret bunker in the Scottish Highlands. All civilian administration has effectively barely any contact with military command for the past 2 days. Their last verified transmission admitted the Scottish border defence line has been breached in multiple places. Edinburgh has fallen. Glasgow's status unknown since communications went dark last night. But I don't even know if anyone can still hear me, but I'll keep broadcasting as long as I can. From my position, I can see fires burning across the entire city skyline. Emergency services collapsed days ago, no military presence for at least 3 days. The infection tore through England far faster than anyone predicted. What started as isolated cases quickly overwhelmed every containment measure. Transmission rates exploded once people crowded into evacuation centres. Those who followed official advice to gather at extraction points became easy prey, victims of the very system meant to save them. I stayed at my post believing people needed a reliable source of information amid the chaos. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe I just fed false hope. The broadcasts, the alerts, the official reassurances, did any of it matter in the end? The past 24 days have seen the United Kingdom simply cease to exist. What began as one contained lab incident has cascaded into what can only be called the end of society. I don't know if these final broadcasts even matter. Maybe they just witness testimony to an empty future. Maybe no one will ever hear these recordings or learn from our failures. But if someone survives, if humanity somehow continues in some form, let this stand as evidence of how quickly everything we built came crashing down when faced with something we couldn't understand or control. God help anyone still listening.
This is an emergency transmission from the last free voice in America. Chuck Sterling here, broadcasting from my fortified bunker in Texas on every shortwave frequency I can reach. If you can hear me, you're getting the truth the corporate media won't touch. The nightmare in Britain isn't an accident. It's a containment operation gone wrong. My contact inside the ministry says the so-called rage virus came out of a black budget weapons program called Project Crimson Dawn, designed to make soldiers unstoppable, but the virus mutated, now it spreads uncontrollably. Reports show entire cities gone in days. London, Manchester, Birmingham, finished. Military retreats, power grids down, no communication. The world's first modern nation collapsed almost overnight. They'll tell you it's under control. It's not. The elite knew this was coming, disappearing into bunkers, flying to private islands while the rest of us are left behind. The so-called international quarantine is a wall around a failed experiment. Britain's a prison colony now. Listen, I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you so you'll prepare. Stock supplies. Stay armed. Protect your family. If this thing ever crosses the Atlantic, it will spread before anyone can stop it. This is Chuck Sterling signing off, maybe for the last time. Stay alert. Stay free. And don't believe a word from the people who created the monster they swore didn't exist.
Good evening. Michael Reynolds here with a breaking news special report on what international authorities are now calling the British containment crisis. It has been 28 days since the first reports emerged of a mysterious infection at a Cambridge research facility. Tonight, we bring you the latest developments in what has become the most extensive quarantine operation in modern history. The United Kingdom, once a global power and key American ally, has effectively ceased to exist as a functioning nation. What began as isolated outbreaks has escalated into a catastrophic collapse of civil authority across the entirety of the British Isles. Communication with the interior of Britain has gone completely silent in the past 72 hours, with the final transmission from London cutting off mid-broadcast 3 days ago. An unprecedented multinational containment effort now surrounds the British Isles. NATO naval forces maintain what military officials describe as an impenetrable quarantine perimeter, extending 50 miles from all UK coastlines. All commercial shipping has been redirected away from British waters. A complete no-fly zone remains in effect, enforced by fighter jets with shoot-down authorization for any aircraft attempting to leave the quarantine zone. The UN Security Council has formally classified the situation as a level 5 biohazard event, the highest possible threat designation. According to leaked WHO documents, the so-called rage virus presents an infection rate approaching 90% with near total mortality among those infected. Medical experts describe it as unlike anything previously documented in virology. Defense Secretary Wilson confirmed earlier today that U.S. Navy vessels have intercepted multiple small boats attempting to flee the British mainland. These quarantine runners, as they're being called, have been placed in offshore isolation facilities for extensive testing. The Defense Secretary declined to comment on reports that several of these vessels contained infected individuals, stating only that all necessary containment protocols were successfully implemented. Satellite imagery from inside Britain paints a grim picture of conditions on the ground. Major urban centers appear largely abandoned or burning, with widespread infrastructure failures across the country. Military analysts estimate that over 60% of the British population has either been infected, killed, or remains in unknown status. The British government itself has gone dark, with Prime Minister Wesker's last known broadcast emerging from a bunker in the Scottish Highlands nearly a week ago. Dr. Vincent Vega joins us now from the CDC headquarters in Atlanta. Dr. Vega, what can you tell us about the virus itself and the containment efforts?
The pathogen responsible for this outbreak presents several unprecedented characteristics, Michael. Unlike traditional viruses that typically target specific bodily systems, this agent primarily attacks the brain, specifically regions associated with impulse control, higher reasoning, and emotional regulation. What remains is essentially a human being reduced to pure rage and predatory instinct. Current containment protocols focus on complete isolation of the British Isles. The virus appears to require direct transmission through bodily fluids. It cannot survive long in the environment without a host, making the island geography of Britain both the perfect incubator and, fortunately, a natural containment barrier. The scientific community remains divided on whether the infection will eventually burn itself out. Some models suggest the infected may ultimately succumb to starvation or environmental factors, while others indicate potential adaptation for longer-term survival. What we can say with certainty is that current containment measures must remain in place indefinitely, potentially for years.
Dr. Vega, there's been considerable discussion about the Cambridge research facility where this outbreak originated. Can you explain what they were actually working on there?
The Cambridge project was part of a broader neurological research initiative. The facility was developing what they termed an anger inhibitor, using a modified strain of Ebola as the delivery mechanism. The virus was engineered to target specific regions of the brain associated with aggression control. What made this approach particularly innovative and ultimately catastrophic was how they modified the Ebola virus to cross the blood-brain barrier with unprecedented efficiency. They essentially created a precision delivery system for neural modification. The problem arose when the virus mutated beyond their predictions, reversing its intended effect. Rather than inhibiting aggressive responses, it began amplifying them while simultaneously shutting down impulse control centers.
So this was never intended as a weapon?
All evidence points to this being a therapeutic research program that went catastrophically wrong. The neurological targeting we're seeing is entirely consistent with the stated research goals of creating an anger inhibitor. The military applications, while obvious in hindsight, appear to have been secondary considerations at most. An international scientific committee is documenting everything we can learn about the virus's development and subsequent mutation. Their findings will be crucial once this crisis eventually ends. But for now, our entire focus remains on maintaining the containment zone and preventing any spread beyond the British Isles.
Thank you, Dr. Vega. Humanitarian organizations have criticized the decision to implement what amounts to a complete abandonment of the British population. Earlier today, I spoke with UN Secretary General Tariq Ahmed about the ethical dimensions of the containment strategy.
This represents perhaps the most difficult moral calculation in modern history. The international community recognizes its obligation to assist those in crisis. However, we face a pathogen with no known treatment or vaccine, a near total infection rate, and catastrophic effects. Every humanitarian instinct must be balanced against the risk of global pandemic. Limited extraction operations were attempted in the early days of the outbreak, focusing on identified uninfected people in secure locations. These missions proved disastrously unsuccessful. The speed of infection spread and the deteriorating security situation made safe evacuation impossible. We lost several extraction teams in the process. The decision to implement complete quarantine came only after all other options were exhausted.
The British quarantine has triggered massive economic disruptions worldwide. Financial markets have experienced unprecedented volatility. with trading halted multiple times over the past week. Supply chains dependent on British manufacturing or shipping routes have collapsed, creating shortages of certain goods across Europe and North America. Economists describe this as a localized extinction event within the global economic ecosystem. Intelligence agencies worldwide remain on high alert for potential bioterrorism connected to the outbreak. While no group has claimed responsibility, several extremist organizations have referenced the British situation in recent communications. Airports and seaports have implemented enhanced screening protocols, and international travel faces restrictions not seen since the early pandemic era. For those concerned about family members who were in Britain when the quarantine was implemented, the State Department has established a special information hotline. Officials caution that information remains extremely limited, and confirmation of individual status inside the quarantine zone is largely impossible at this time. As night falls over what was once the United Kingdom, the world watches and waits. Will the infection burn itself out? Can the quarantine hold indefinitely? What does the future hold for a nation effectively erased from the global community? These questions have no easy answers, but their resolution will shape international policy for generations to come. The CDC has released new guidance for Americans concerned about potential domestic outbreaks. Officials emphasize that no cases have been detected outside the quarantine zone, and extensive monitoring systems remain in place at all points of entry. Basic precautions include awareness of surroundings, reporting unusual behavior to authorities, and maintaining standard hygiene practices. This special report will continue throughout the evening with updates as they become available. I'm Michael Reynolds. When we return, we'll examine the long-term implications of maintaining an indefinite quarantine around a former nuclear power and what it means for global security in an increasingly unstable world. We're interrupting our coverage of the European crisis for this urgent address from the President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, tonight I must speak to you about an unprecedented catastrophe unfolding across the Atlantic. The United Kingdom has experienced what can only be described as a biological cataclysm. Our monitoring systems confirm that all organized communication from the British mainland has ceased. Satellite imagery shows widespread infrastructure failure and mass population displacement consistent with the highest level of public health disaster classification. In response to this extraordinary threat, I have just authorized the most severe travel restrictions in American history. Effective immediately, all air and sea travel between the United States and Europe is suspended indefinitely. Our military has established a naval quarantine zone extending 200 nautical miles from all British territorial waters. Any vessel attempting to leave this zone without specific authorization will be intercepted and, if necessary, disabled by force. I've directed the Defense Secretary to implement immediate shoot-down protocols for any aircraft attempting to depart British airspace without proper security clearance through military channels. These extreme measures are not taken lightly, but are absolutely necessary to prevent the potential spread of what intelligence sources have identified as a neurological pathogen with unprecedented transmission rates and lethality. The CDC has activated its Emergency Operations Center at Level 1, the highest possible alert status. FEMA and Homeland Security are coordinating with state and local authorities to implement enhanced screening at all entry points and establish rapid response protocols should any cases appear within our borders. To American citizens currently in Europe, we are working around the clock to bring you home safely. Evacuation operations are underway from secure collection points in unaffected European countries. Priority is given to U.S. passport holders, though capacity is limited by necessary quarantine and screening requirements. The State Department has established dedicated emergency lines for Americans seeking evacuation assistance. To our NATO allies and international partners, America stands ready to provide humanitarian and technical support. while maintaining essential quarantine measures. We're working closely with the World Health Organization and the UN Security Council to create a unified global response. This crisis demands international cooperation on an unprecedented scale. I want to address the horrific footage and reports that have emerged from Britain over these past 3 weeks. The behavior exhibited by the infected represents a threat unlike anything in modern medical experience. The neurological effects of this pathogen, particularly the extreme aggression among infected groups, have overwhelmed all conventional containment efforts. America's scientific community is working tirelessly to understand this pathogen and develop potential treatments. We've activated our entire biodefense research network with multiple biosafety level 4 facilities now focused exclusively on analyzing samples obtained through secure channels before communications collapsed. While I cannot offer false promises of an immediate solution, I assure you that every resource at our disposal is being directed toward this effort. To all Americans watching tonight, I understand the fear and uncertainty this situation evokes. The images from Britain are profoundly disturbing, and the rapid collapse of an advanced, modern nation raises serious questions about our collective vulnerability. However, our geographic isolation provides critical advantages in preventing spread to our shores. The Atlantic Ocean creates a natural quarantine barrier that gives us valuable time to prepare and respond. Nevertheless, reasonable precautions are warranted. Health and Human Services is issuing detailed guidance for individuals and communities. These measures are not cause for panic, but for thoughtful, deliberate preparation. Your government is implementing comprehensive contingency plans specifically developed for biological threats of this magnitude. In closing, I ask for your continued trust in our institutions, your support for necessary security measures, and your prayers for those affected by this calamity. Throughout our history, America has faced seemingly insurmountable challenges with resolve and unity. This moment demands that same strength of character and national purpose. May God watch over the survivors of this catastrophe, and may God bless the United States of America.
That was President Joe Montana addressing the nation regarding the catastrophic situation in the United Kingdom and parts of continental Europe. As the president indicated, all organized communication with the British mainland terminated approximately 36 hours ago, following days of increasingly fragmented and disturbing broadcasts from the few remaining media outlets. The international quarantine of the British Isles represents a containment measure unprecedented in modern history. Emergency sessions of the UN Security Council continue around the clock as world leaders struggle to coordinate a response to what many are now openly describing as the complete collapse of a G7 nation. Our coverage of this developing crisis continues throughout the evening, including analysis of the potential economic and security implications for the United States and the global community.